And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, we're live.
Good morning, everybody. Bright and early. I see a couple of our friends here, listeners to the podcast. They're present with duty before we even got here. Outstanding. Thank you so much for being here. Nighthawk 13666, Sleepy Joe, Yvette, how you doing? I don't know if you have any more axes to grind with John. Unfiltered Fishing, Patrick Donahue, Matt O'Brien, Paul Haggerty, Timothy's Travels. Some interesting names over here. I like that. Joe Mango, what's up, brother? Yeah, AJ, Sherry, how you doing? Eddie Nunez, many more. Listen, thank you so much. John, let's get into it, brother.
Yeah, all right, people. So listen, attention to roll call. All right. Color of the day is orange. Don't put that out. I don't know what the color of the day is. But yeah, dude. So Eric Adams, man, my new movie star guy, you know, the new hero in my book, or the villain in my book, the anti-hero. He's being absolutely defiant. He's refusing to step down. He's doubling down on his calls. He had his off-topic Tuesday event yesterday. Normally, he's sitting there with a dais, right? He's a dais. He got all his deputy mayors. He has his chief legal counsel. Instead, he just does it in the lobby of City Hall, just by himself. He fields all the questions by himself. He's got no legal counsel up there with him. He has some brilliant responses to everything. But yeah, man, it appears to be a sinking ship, but he's not going nowhere. They had a prayer on the steps of City Hall last night, 5:30. Had Reverend Daughtry. They had the NYPD Guardians, Patrick Gordon, someone who was saying something about racist memes, making stuff about this podcast, calling for us to stand behind him. And there was a lot of public support for Eric Adams yesterday. What do you think about Eric Adams refusing to resign at this point?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you. So yesterday we spoke about this, and you said he's not resigning. He's not resigning. And I thought, I kind of went back and forth. I said at some point he has to resign, right? But what really solidified it for me and changed my opinion, at first I thought at some point he's going to have to resign. He's on an island by himself. He's not having any more support. It's really starting to dwindle down. But he's so narcissistic that he's not going anywhere. And after that speech that he gave in church where he said he's not going to resign, he's going to reign, which means, and he knows his words. He's choosy when it comes to his words, which means he's going to be a king. I know this sounds crazy, but I think he's enjoying this. I've said it before, but I think the less people that are around him now, and everything is really centered around him, and he believes he's some kind of king. I think he's enjoying this, and I don't think he's going anywhere. I think they would have to drag him out by his ankles and get him out of there. And I kind of envy him in a way. Like, I wish that I could live that life of not having any shame or embarrassment. I mean, even just on my level, as the most complained cop, I felt confident the work I was doing out there was great work. And even then, faced with 8 sets of administrative charges in a 6-week period, I was like, it was embarrassing. Not embarrassing because I did anything wrong, but embarrassing I could no longer be the same Eric Dim. I couldn't go out there and do what I was paid and trained to do. I'm sitting there with this pile. But him, on his level, in such exposure to the public eye, he has zero shame and embarrassment. If anything, I think it's propelled him even further. I envy his character in a weird way. What about you?
Oh, I'm telling you, the guy has brass balls, man. He's not, you don't see him sweating, but he's arrogant. I'm looking at a guy standing up there alone with absolutely no cabinet on an off-topic Tuesday. Everyone around him is resigning, and he's just like, nah, everything's fine. Everything's good. We're getting new faces in here. It's the city government. People leave all the time. No big deal. People come and go all the time. This job's a hard job. I get it. People can't do what I do. And meanwhile, he in the background, he's pushing these people out, right? So I would love to know what they're thinking. Hearing through the grapevine, Sheena writes next. to go down maybe early next week. She's going to step down. Nothing to do with the investigation, you know. No, everything's fine. Adams administration's it's moving. You know, it's no distractions, grind, all that good stuff. So he's completely defiant, dude. I agree with you, but the arrogance and you know, it came up yesterday. Came up yesterday again. You know, I asked twice of a police commissioner. I still ask of the new guy, and we know the answer, right? And now it comes up for Eric Adams. The question is, has these investigations hurt your ability to get intel, secured intelligence, federal intelligence? Has it helped? Has it hurt your intelligence clearance? And he refused to answer the question. So the refusal to answer the question in itself is the answer. That is yes, right? Same way when John Shell did it prior to the UN, right? He's like, I'm not answering that question. You don't have to answer that question because you just did. That is your answer. Your answer is yes, it did. Yes, we don't know what's going on in New York City. And no one seems to care about that. No one seems to care. This guy hasn't accomplished one thing. His police department's in shambles. His administration's in shambles. We're continuously losing cops over and over again. Response times are going through the roof. Spoke with a bunch of EMS workers and firefighters. And I had a lot of negative feedback about the men and women on the street, and, you know, kind of put it into perspective for them. I've been saying on this podcast for a long time, this is diminished, weakened version of the New York City Police Department. We've been telling you over and over again, they're lying about the numbers. The numbers in the New York City Police Department are not accurate. The numbers of the cops that are supposedly out on the street every night are not accurate, right? And so what the complaint is happening from EMS and the FDNY is this. They're saying that when they're responding to scenes such as EDPs or any other aides, and the scene turns criminal or the scene turns crazy and they need help. I had one instance where someone was telling me they were assaulted. Their team was assaulted by 4 individuals on New York City streets. 2 EMS workers were being assaulted. They called for help. The cops didn't come for 45 minutes. So if you think response times don't matter, you're out of your mind. If you think that this guy's running the city properly, you're out of your mind. If you think that this police department is properly staffed, properly trained, and the morale is okay, and they're here and they're able to provide public safety for New York City, you're not paying attention. Eric, what do you think about that? They're calling for help and it's taken 45 minutes. Is it because the cops don't want to go? Or is it because they don't have enough manpower and they're stuck on other things?
Surprised. I mean, we've been talking about a diminished police department, and this administration has gaslighted every bit of information, including manpower. Good morning, Cafecito Break, by the way. Good morning. Listen, we love you. Outstanding. Check out Cafecito Break. We've been saying this for 2 years right now. I mean, when I retired, it's September 30th, actually, this month, which was 2 days ago, I just celebrated 2 years in retirement. And I remember when I retired, at the time, the numbers, at least that we had on the 360, which is that NYPD database that gives you manpower demographics. And it was around 33,000. And that, of course, we know people that are on military leave and women that are out on maternity leave, people that are actually on terminal leave, they're included in those numbers. And it was around 33,000. And we've seen a diminished police department in these past 2 years. We've seen substantial numbers. And I think even those numbers at that time were off. So I think right now it's a scarecrow crew out there. Absolutely. The police department is spread thin also. And especially with Mayor Eric Adams' plan. His plan is to utilize resources and relocate them to the subway. So all we're doing right now, it's like if we had a bucket of holes and we're pouring water into it, we're trying to cover these holes, and we only have so many hands. We don't have enough hands to cover these holes, and the water just keeps coming out. And that's what's going on with this administration. Nothing but gaslighting. That's why I same thing as you, John. We are in constant conversation. We got dialogue with cops on a daily basis. And some of the cops really, unfortunately, have been bamboozled. And I get it. You're busy working, maybe not into the politics portion of it. and they only see the amenities, and they see it as somehow stemming from Eric Adams. Oh, we're getting more overtime, so you have more money in your pocket, and less cops are getting modified. And I said, do you think that is because Eric Adams appreciates you? I think it's because he likes you, because look at the streets right now. He's doing it because he has to. He's giving you this extreme amount of overtime because there's no cops out there. I mean, we're pulling from Peter to pay Paul. I've said it for the longest time. I'm so curious of how these detective squad cases are suffering. Clearly, we could see on its face when it comes to special victims, that unit is definitely suffering. We see the stranger rapes that are going on right now. It's insane. And some of these sexual predators that are out there right now, it's not their first offense. We know that in most cases, but they're out there committing several offenses before they get apprehended. It's scary stuff because these units are completely diminished. Also, someone had made a great comment here. I just want to reflect on it because it's a topic that we're going to speak about today. It's something about Miranda, if I could find it. But I don't see it right now. There's just so many comments coming in. But somebody had spoken about Miranda. Well, Miranda's dirty too. Why are we not speaking about him yet? You're 100% right. We just spoke about it offline. We're going to speak about Miranda also because, I mean, what happened with Miranda was just a clear indication of guilt. I know we kind of touched on it briefly, but when we talk about this police department is a shell of what it was when you and I were in our era, especially when we started the police department. It was probably the strongest it was in numbers and just performance. What do you think, John?
Like I said, it's a completely diminished police department. The response times, you're looking at almost the response times are up almost 5 minutes, over 5 minutes. There's a city council hearing coming up on response time soon. I'll let everybody know when it is. I forget the exact date. But now we're hearing it from other first responders saying it's not just the public complaining, right? It's also the first responders complaining, saying, I'm calling for help and nobody's there. Or I call for help and nobody's there, yet they're telling me that 84 on the scene, meaning that they already are there on the scene. So they're putting over the radio they're there when they're not there, and people are going to get hurt. You know, you're going to get a first responder killed or an emotionally disturbed person. So if any of you guys, don't put yourself 84 at any scene. Let the response times reflect exactly what they are. If you are not on that scene, do not put yourself going 84. Do not do that. First of all, you're just opening yourself up. You're opening yourself up and you're doing it to high numbers. So to pretend everything's fine when it's not. When you're driving out there with 1 or 2 cars, your sergeant's driving by himself, or your lieutenant's driving by himself, and you guys are really fighting, you're not getting meals, you're running around, and they're flooding the transit system, right? They're flooding the transit system now. They're doing all of these stupid things. I saw Kaz out yesterday, all this personnel playing this game on Staten Island with OEM and the fire department, and they're all flying drones. And I'm like, what is this? Like, what is going on with all this nonsense? Like, listen, there's technology that works, and then there's technology that's a waste of time. This drone technology, it's good, it's supplemental, but the amount of effort and money spent is a complete waste. I mean, it wasn't properly thought out. Every program that they've had it in failed, right? It was going to save people on the beach. It saved nobody. It went to watching sharks. It was going to chase vehicles down. Never chased anything. It was going to stop subway surfing. Now we're just videoing subway surfing. It's like the shark sighting. We're doing that. We're just videoing subway. I mean, it's cool videos. The kids will probably want them. Probably making them want to do it more. Yeah, the drone's coming up. They're going to get me on video. I mean, everything that it was gonna clean up the crime in Central Park. It can't even see under the trees. They were all autonomous, but they all need operators, and they can't even park themselves up on the roof. 2 of them dropped out of the sky. 1 dropped on somebody's car. I mean, I constantly get sent pictures of them failing to launch at details and things of that nature. I just think, again, it's just more of a, let's ignore, pretend everything's fine in the NYPD. We're going to move towards this AI technology and everything's good. But every normalcy that we know in New York City, patrols, regular routine patrols are down, response times are down. When other first responders, and that's including you guys, are calling for help, it's taking longer for cops to get there. And that's going to lead to someone getting killed. Unfortunately, it's going to lead to the fact you're going to see maybe a fire company, an EMS truck, something of this nature. They're going to be seriously injured because the cops didn't get there in time. And this is again why I'm so against the encrypted radios, because we need to know what's going on out there. Now, there could be a delay. I have no problem with a delay. But when there's a review of what happened, people, the public, the media, everyone needs to know what happened on that radio call. When you hear EMS call for help for 45 minutes, when they're getting beat up or they're beat up and they're being attacked and they're in a dangerous situation, tell me you feel safe.
Before I go in, I got to laugh here. Timothy's Travels, definitely somebody I know, because he says, Dim, stop wearing a hat. Enjoy your hair while you still have them. I got to laugh. Definitely somebody I know. Timothy's Travels. Hit me up later on Instagram or, X through DM so I know who you are. It's definitely somebody I know, because everybody that knows me always call me Dim. My hairline's not as good as it used to be. I still got it, but, I like wearing a hat. It's just kind of my thing. But John, you're absolutely right. And what's a shame about this, right? This is the problem with the police department. The police department doesn't necessarily find solutions. They find temporary fixes. And how do they do that? By utilizing cops to fix things that should be just completely, let's find the actual root cause to fix it. So instead of doing that, because the commanders, and shame on them, shame on them for allowing their cops to be put in a position where they're putting over a radio code is 84, right? Most of our cops here are active and retired NYPD, but for our outside cities and states, our friends enlisted to the pockets, 84, that's a radio code 1084 for the NYPD, means that you arrived at a location. It's very important. When you say arrived, you have to physically be there. But if you're not there and you say that you're there because you're doing it for your commanding officer because his response times aren't good, you're not helping anybody. And shame on your commanding officer. I mean, we know commanding officers do things just like this because they want to get promoted. And the reality is the leadership, again, I put the failure on the leadership, and it's not just this administration, but this administration has to be far more egregious. But we're not fixing the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the, excuse me, but the root cause of the problems for response times is because we have a diminished police department. And the answer is, why do we have a diminished police department? Well, we have a diminished police department because we've allowed thousands of police officers to leave the job, veteran police officers, because of a vaccine mandate, which was built on a complete lie. We've allowed thousands of police officers to leave this job because they've been tainted by the Civilian Complaint Review Board. No longer can they do what they're paid and trained to do. We've allowed police officers to have to leave or be terminated based on politics, aka Sal Greco. And we've lost a veteran portion component of the department. And it's been replaced with this DEI. We've emasculated the police department. Our response times are terrible. And these commanders should allow the response times to be terrible, to say, hey, I need more resources. You need to hire more personnel so that I can actually have these response times. But no, again, goes back to being self-serving. Let's not fix the problems. Let's fake these response times so that I, the commanding officer, can get promoted. Self-serving. And that's the problem we see, especially when it comes to that billet as a commanding officer. The pressure that they allow to be forced upon them to get to that next executive level. It's no surprise. I mean, look, Bruce Separano, who's an inspector for the NYPD, an inspector, I'm sure he's probably on his way to chief right now, is embarrassed and ashamed to say that he knows me. We know each other for years. And when he's confronted by Cop Watch and he's confronted by outside people, if you know Eric Dim, he's afraid to admit that he knows me. And that's an inspector. Have some fortitude. But listen, it all shows that when we're cowardice, it affects public safety. It affects the cops. It affects their boots on the ground. Here goes Miranda, star of the show.
Yeah. So, I always say, like, we don't need credit and we don't want credit and we don't care. But if anybody pays attention, if you watch the stuff we put out on social media and then you watch the news cycle and you watch what happens, it directly relates to this podcast. So, we've been Dom to Ellipso. We actually were the first people to call out Anthony Miranda. Watched the city council hearing where he testified. Started putting out clips on social media. Immediately did an episode about it. Highlighted in on the part where Justin Brennan, the finance chair of city council, and I don't think, by the way, Justin Brennan did this intentionally. I think he kind of just stumbled into it with the questions. He started asking Anthony Miranda about seizures. So first it was, all right, how many arrests have you made during these raids of businesses? Anthony Miranda has no idea. How? I don't know. That means you're not keeping any notes. You're not keeping track of anything. Then he asks him, how much money have you confiscated? And Anthony Miranda says, we didn't confiscate any money to the best of my knowledge. And then he asks him, well, where does confiscated money go? And Anthony Miranda says, well, considering I don't believe we confiscated any money. It would go either investigatory or arrest evidence. But that's not accurate, because it would either go investigatory, arrest evidence, or forfeiture, right? And then so Brandon brushes over that as well, and he just jumps right to the forfeiture account. He's like, so how much money have you seized in 2023? And Miranda again says, I don't believe we seized any money. And Brandon says, well, there was about $200 and something thousand in 23 put into your forfeiture account. And there's about $800,000 in total in your forfeiture account. So we started saying on this podcast that obviously an audit needs to be done, because Anthony Miranda has zero idea how many arrests there were, how many NYPD officers are assigned to him, how much money he's confiscated, where the confiscated money goes, how the money is invoiced, right? Because he's saying, oh, no, we don't do it. The NYPD does it, even though Sheriff's Union is saying the exact opposite. We have videos from businesses showing the exact opposite. We have videos of the NYPD and the sheriff's office grandstanding on how they're conducting raids. And myself and Eric broke that down for you guys as well, showing that they're not properly inventorying these things, and they're not cataloging exactly who's the recovering officer and putting all of these things in. And traditionally, that would happen in a search warrant. There's too many hands in the cookie jar. There's too many people playing around in there. There's people in there that shouldn't be in there. And so we said that's an integrity issue. It's an integrity issue, and it's not only an integrity issue because something bad could happen there, but it harms the integrity of the case. So we highlighted all of that, and then because of that, Justin Brannon a few days later put out his own clip, which mirrored the same clip that we put in, and the same clip we were talking about. And then after that, an investigation sparked against Anthony Miranda. Eric, before I go any further on Miranda, like what were your initial thoughts when you watched the testimony?
Oh, we spoke about it so many times because it was just so shocking. I mean, we already had our assessment and we thought he was a complete moron. But I did say that even the stupidest people I've ever met, when it comes to money, they don't forget money. I mean, we all know, listen, we've had friends, we've crossed paths in life with people that are unintelligible. But if you owe them $50, they'll remember it. And if they have to compute how much money they made at a particular job or how much they should make, I mean, listen, most of the people here are active or retired cops. We know, we've worked with those cops, like, man, this guy's an idiot. But he knows how much overtime he's supposed to make. He knows how much money he's supposed to get. So does Miranda. Miranda knows when you're seizing funds, you know how much money is there. So it was just, he's a moron, but at the same time, smart enough to lie about it. Completely arrogant also, just to lie about that. Like, you think someone's not going to probe when it comes to that? Just absolutely ridiculous. What's also indicative to me, when this was self-reported that approximately 150,000 was seized. Well, if 150,000 was seized on your self-reporting, how much money is there really? How much money is behind the curtain somewhere hidden? You know, is this something like the movie In the Town? You have money hidden, you know, at an orange grove or something like that. You have money hidden under grass, because if you're actually self-reporting 150,000, there's definitely money hidden behind that. I would put my last dollar on it, brother.
I mean, so again, we just said that obviously the sheriff's office needed to be audited, and his responses absolutely warrant an investigation into him, and the investigation ensues. And there's several investigations around the sheriff's office, tied in with the Office of the Nightlife, tied in with marijuana enforcement, tied in with a few other things. And again, this is another Eric Adams appointment. So the guy, it's beyond he can't manage, right? Because it's everyone that he appointed is ensnared in a corruption scandal. And they're not small corruption scandals, by the way. It's not something it's like, oh yeah, Biden and Harris decided to target him 30-something days before the election because he spoke out against the migrant crisis. It's like, really? And then they're bringing down the entirety of New York City, the whole administration. So the investigation spark, Miranda, what appears to be his conscience getting the better of him, calls DOI on himself. Says, I found $100,000 or whatever the amount was in my office. You found $100,000 in your office and you don't know where it came from? After you just testified that you don't seize money, that you're not in charge of taking money? I'm going to say right now, I'm with you, Eric. Where there's smoke, there's not always fire, as Eric Adams says. But when there's a cloud of smoke and there's a plume of smoke and you got to run out of that building because the smoke is so thick, oh, there's a fire. And there's a big one. And there might even be multiple ones. So before we go any further, people, we got 400 people on here. If you guys just could do us a favor, if you could like, subscribe. For those of you on social media, if you could just hit the repost button. Positive comments, negative comments, all welcome. But if you are going to comment, please make sure you're in the live chat and not commenting on the post itself. Appreciate you guys.
Jesse James, good morning, brother. Thank you so much. Awesome friend to the podcast. He always dips into his pocket. Thank you so much. 1999. The squads went from 10 cops to 5 or less. Sectors turning out went from 6 to 3. Supervisors are driving themselves. Veterans are leaving in the droves only to be replaced by new cops who barely passed academy. You are spot on, brother. It's definitely some good insights. Absolutely. I've been saying for the longest time. Remember, John, 2 years ago, I said, you're going to see first-grade detectives in the detective squad that have some serious and high-prolific cases. They're going to be pushing Sector Adam, or they're going to be pushing Sector Boy in some command because of the diminished police department that we have. You know, Adams had perpetuated more lies, as he always does, and gaslight the public to believe that we're going to strip from these administrative positions and everyone that has a gun belt and able body, especially these young police officers, will be out there in the street. And that's been far from the truth because we've seen an 86 manpower social media unit under Kaz Daughtry and Tariq Shepard, Deputy Commissioner Operations, Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, to combat this podcast, to combat Harry Siegler, to combat Mike Colomb. All these podcasts out there, anyone that has a thought out there, a critical opinion. I'm surprised that they didn't make it even larger just to follow also our friends and listeners on this podcast. But that's what we have with this administration, gaslighting. Miranda should have never been in a position of leadership, especially the sheriff's department, where you have your hands on a substantial amount of money. I mean, the only thing that could have been worse would be Timothy Pearson in his position. But again, this just shows you Eric Adams is a terrible leader, despite what we're hearing by some people that are supporting him, believe he's under attack for his political views, which is just complete nonsense. Doesn't make any sense. But again, this is someone that's in his circle. This is an appointment based on nepotism. Nepotism does equate to corruption because when you're so embedded in these friendships, and these friendships are sketchy, and you have friends that have dirt on them and dirt behind them, this is what you bring. I mean, they all owe each other favors. I'm sure they all have information on each other, potential blackmail. I mean, they've been friends for years. Nepotism equates to corruption. I mean, it's so egregious right now. I'm not shocked by this. So, who was it? Said Dom Tullipso. Is that how you say it? Said the same thing I was saying. If there's 150,000 that he actually provided, he was probably nervous that maybe it was in his house and maybe he thought he was the next to be raided and have his phone taken. So again, I think with someone, if you do have money hidden, miraculously 150,000, there's definitely more money behind that.
Yeah, and then so after this comes out, it's amazing how Eric Adams has the ability to deflect everything. Like, it's amazing. So he says, this is the guy that seized $867 million in illegal cannabis. I have the utmost faith in him, or like whatever, sum and substance. He has faith in him or confidence in him, whatever Eric Adams said. He still, even after he doesn't know how much money they've confiscated, even though they've by all means confiscated at least now 300,000, 200,000 went into the forfeiture account. He didn't acknowledge forfeiture money at all. He said there's only two ways that we take money, which is as arrest evidence, which means it will be used against you in your court case, or it's for safekeeping, which is like we would just, or as an investigatory, we don't know where it came from. We don't know that it was the proceeds of the crime. But there's the third way, safekeeping, right? We're just holding it for you. And then there's the fourth way, which is forfeiture, meaning this were the proceeds of a crime and we are taking it. It's gone. You're not going to get this money back. But there's a preceding court case that needs to happen. Forfeiture, we don't just take people's property and money, and people have the right to due process, but it appears the sheriff's office has removed due process from businesses. So a lot of businesses are now asking, where's my money? But Eric Adams comes out. I have the utmost confidence in him. He seized $867 million in cannabis products. How do we know that accounting is right? We saw them doing these operations, going into these businesses, shuttering them. We saw how they handled this product. We saw the lack of inventory, the lack of identifying who's recovering, the lack of integrity of the crime scene, of cataloging all of this inventory. How do we know that the $867 million in cannabis product is in fact that? If he doesn't know the basic stuff, he doesn't know how many arrests there are, he doesn't know how many officers are assigned to him, he doesn't know how much money was confiscated. He doesn't know anything. He had no stats on anything, but we're going to take his word on the marijuana. And then they're so quick to destroy the evidence, even though there was that marijuana is product. That marijuana is part of litigation. That marijuana is technically someone's property. We don't just eliminate the United States Constitution, but yet they went and destroyed the stuff. And so those business owners were without due process because a lot of them were waiting for their court case. They could potentially have gotten that product back. So they destroy the illegal marijuana. And what business owners are saying is that if you look at the tables when they showed what they were destroying, that was the cheapest products that were out there. And they were like, where was all the expensive stuff? Where was all the stuff that was a lot of money? I didn't see it anywhere. And so business owners are saying, I don't believe that my property was destroyed. I believe it's somewhere else. I don't believe that stuff got destroyed that day, even though they're going to say it did. But how do we trust the accountant? Obviously, Miranda needs to be removed, but Adams isn't going to do it. Obviously, Eric Adams needs to be removed, but Kathy Hochul is not going to do it. And something else I found out, there's 3 ways to remove the mayor. I didn't know this. The governor, city council actually has the power to remove the mayor. And then the other aspect of it is there could be like a special council with a bunch of different elected representatives could convene and remove the seated mayor. But look, Eric Adams won't step down. He hasn't removed any of his people. They're stepping down in their own time when they're ready, whatever that is. I mean, the city's in shambles, and we're seeing corruption scandal after corruption scandal. Eric, like if this guy worked for you and all this came out and he's coming out and telling you, oh yeah, we received 800, but we took 867 million in marijuana though. Do you believe that number?
So what do we learn in the police department, right? and I have to use the police department as a basis because that was our forte and that was our job, right? You learn in the police department that if it's not on paper, it didn't happen. And so documentation in the police department is so important, right? Because that's what you reflect on. Documentation, and documentation that you actually keep audit and keep record has to correspond with your actual data. So we know for a fact that they're doing seizures, because if they're not, what are they doing? Right? But that is their job. They're not a law enforcement agency. They are a revenue-based agency. Let's not deny it. It's the New York City Sheriff's is a revenue-based agency based on possessions and based on seizures and an extreme amount of cash, and it's civil in nature. So one thing I had learned about CompStat, so there's a lot of good things about CompStat. There's a lot of negative things about CompStat. But one good thing I learned about CompStat, and if you're a commanding officer that was effective in giving information at CompStat about what's going on in your precinct, you're not expected to know every piece of information or data in your precinct to the number, to the T. I'm sure certain things in the spotlight, but what you do need to be able to have the ability and capability is to know where to find that information, right? We would see the commanders carry these large books, and it's so important how they would keep those books, whether it was color coordinated or it was done by number, so that they have the ability to find the information if requested upon. So if we had a commanding officer that was asked how much money was vouchered in a precinct, they would know because it would be in their folder and it would be color coordinated. It would be easily identifiable so that they could find the information and give that information out. And it's not hard for Miranda. He's in a position for leadership. He has staff working for him. This is stuff that could have been audited. This is stuff that could have been documented. The data could have been organized properly, but he didn't have any information, and he didn't even have the resources at his avail to actually provide that information. Because again, that to me, that was another indication that he's just completely lying. And if he's not corrupt, if he's just a complete moron, well, he doesn't belong there either. For one, if he's a complete moron, it's completely ineffective. And if he's a moron and he's corrupt, well, that's an even bigger problem. But clearly, if you don't have the information and the resource to actually get to it, you could say, I don't know what the number is at the top of my head, but I do have the data, and let me take a look at it and show you. I can tell you, I mean, you should have a roundabout number, especially when it comes to money. I can tell you substantially it was more than $500,000 or close to $1 million. Let me get you those exact numbers, but that's not what he's telling you. Complete moron, completely evasive. And then miraculously the next day, because your heart was pounding and because you had anxiety and you couldn't sleep, and now money's starting to show up, that was a huge red flag. That was desperate times bring desperate measures, and that's what happened to him.
Absolutely, man. He should have been removed, honestly, immediately after that testimony. And there should have been an investigation conducted right away, figuring out who's in charge of what's happening, what's the procedure, what's going on. The sheriff's office should have been halted and shuttered that day until they figured out what procedures this man put in place and what's going on, because obviously something's not right there. Whether it's criminal or an incompetence, it can't go on. It had to be stopped immediately, but it's not. He's still in power. He's calling DOI. Oh yeah, I just found $100,000 cash. I just found $100,000 cash. So so not only should he be removed, but I'm saying it again, Eric Adams should be removed. Before we go back into Eric Adams, though, we got a lot of stuff. We're gonna keep coming at you. We're gonna do some rapid fire. Patrick Donahue has a great comment here. He says, the over-explaining the benefit of the drone program and other technology-driven policing may be happening to justify questionable contracts with these vendors. I just wanted to highlight that. I don't really want to get into it, but I will, because it's a great comment. And Pat, I 100% agree with you. That is 100% what it appears to be. Those contracts, when it's surrounding AI, appear to be very questionable, and possibly that is the exact reason of the over-explaining. So again, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that me and Eric make the world go round. But again, I want to tell you right now, if we weren't talking about a lot of things wouldn't happen. So we showed you Relly Rel. We showed you what happened when he harassed a police officer. We showed you the video he made after that, right, where he said that we were talking about it on the podcast. We said that he should be arrested for 7 crimes, and then this U.S. Marshals went to his house and arrested him for those 7 crimes. And then what happens? Cop's house is a target by Rel, right? He gets identified. Why? Through this podcast, right? Because we played that video. Hey, does that sound familiar? Yeah, that's Rel, right? We showed that. And then Rel is arrested. I don't believe that would have happened if not for this podcast. And I don't think any of you guys believe that either. So now here comes the dog and pony show. Here comes the people who support the candidates who support the defund the police movement. Good friend Tom Sullivan is running against a Democrat who voted for bail reform, who voted for 50A, who voted against your parental rights, who voted to not keep our borders secure and to give illegal aliens more money than they give you and your family. And the PBA decided to endorse her and not Tom Sullivan, who would have done the exact opposite on all of those bills and would have supported the health and welfare of officers, would have supported your safety, would have supported your career, your ability to get a pension. And it can't be denied. When I see this whole board here, and I know some of you guys are watching this, and you're going to be mad about this, I just see another highlight and failure. In my eyes, they're no different from the Adams administration. They may not be as corrupt, but this is a highlight and failure. It's a highlight and wrong messaging. And honestly, none of their messaging would even be anywhere on point or sound legit if not for this podcast. I almost wish at some points this podcast didn't exist just to watch them fumble around in the dark and not know what to do. Eric, what do you think about them endorsing Tom Sullivan's opponent, who supported all of these things? She supported taking away parental rights and giving it to the state, supported open borders, supported giving more money to illegal aliens, supported bail reform, supported the 50A, supported all of these crazy, insane, pro-criminal legislation.
First of all, it's disgraceful. But before I even get into that, Timothy's Travels, if you're still here, you asked why I'm wearing a hat. I still have some hair left. Here's a guy that needs a hat. This guy has about 3 hairs left in his head. He needs a hat. You know what, John? I think when it comes Christmas time, I actually might buy him like a Sylvester Stallone type Rocky Balboa hat and send it to Patrick Henry. So Patrick Henry, be ready for a gift because you need a hat. But I'll tell you this, it's disgraceful. You know, back 2 years ago when we really started this podcast together, John had said to me, wow, look at the campaign donations that they're giving the PBA to Governor Kathy Hochul. And I'm like, wow. He's like, you think I should put it out there? I'm like, absolutely. This is unfiltered. We're putting everything out in the public, whether it's good for them or not. This is unfiltered, and we're going to be honest and true. This is not just back to blue, give a cop a hug, grab a cup of coffee. Let's be honest. Let's tell the truth. So I always say to myself, it's completely self-serving. And they want to give the indication and gaslight, just as this administration gaslights the public. They want to gaslight the cops and say, well, sort of like Eric Adams, right, John? They're all cut from the same cloth. I did this for you. I'm giving Kathy Hochul money for you so that we can have proposals actually pass in Albany for you. And meanwhile, all that money, nothing came out of it. So the more that we see that they back these wacko opponents to people that we support, that actually support common sense and support law enforcement, you have to say to yourself, why? How does the PBA board, this day is right, how do they benefit? So I'm starting to think that maybe they're bought. Maybe they're bought by these people that are in complete opposition to police work. Say, hey, listen, you know what? You endorse us, we'll take care of you. Because one thing I know about the PBA board, especially Patrick Henry and Patrick Lynch, they're all self-serving. They're there because they want to take care of themselves. Because if they had to go strap on a uniform and wear that body camera that they got a raise for, if they had to give out business cards, they wouldn't be there. they'd be retired a long time ago. Patrick Henry probably would have retired when he still had hair in his head. But they're there because life is good. And everything they do is in opposition and polarizing what's good for the cops. And that's why I ask the cops right now, why do you continue to pay union dues? Why? You're paying approximately $55 a week. I think it's $51.84 biweekly. Let's say there is approximately 20,000 actually police officers on the ground. How many millions are they getting per year? I done the math one time. Substantial. For what? You know, people tell me, oh, because you get representation. Really? Kenny Victoria, who's just been indicted, an active police officer in the 4-4 precinct. He's seeking out his own attorney. Now, I hope that the PBA will step in and fund him and give him some type of voucher based on the amount of funds that it would cost if they utilize their own attorneys. But if that's the case, I would say 99% of the time when cops are in a pickle, they seek out their own attorneys. Why are we funding the police department? I'm sorry. Why are we funding the PBA so they can fund people that are in opposition? Why? John, it wouldn't make sense. John, if I said, you know what, John, I'm going to give you $100 so that you can give it to my enemy who's going to hurt me. Does that make any sense? You're giving money to a union that is giving that money to your enemy that is not helping you, is actually hurting you. And these people aren't silent. They're publicly saying they have a disdain and bias and prejudice for police work. They want to defund the police. They want more oversight. They push for civilian complaint review board. They're hurting you. And you're funding it. You're the police officer. You're funding it. Well, some people say, but you get dental and prescriptions through them. Well, I can tell you this right now. I've done my research. You can get a dental plan and you can get a prescription plan that's pretty much cost the same amount, maybe about $25 to $50 more a month. And you would not have to be owned by the union. You would not be providing this beautiful and illustrious lifestyle. These guys are not staying there until 63 because it's a miserable job. They're staying there because it's fantastic. They're staying there because they live on your funds. They live on your dues. And yet they're not helping you. So start calling them up on the phone and start asking questions. We never ask these questions. Who are you endorsing this year? Who are you endorsing in my district? If you're a city resident, ask them, who do you endorse in my district? Start asking these questions and ask them, why am I giving you my dues? Why? Because if I am in a jam or pickle, I'm going to pick out my own attorneys. Maybe they should also have an election on what attorneys they utilize, because I know some of the cops are happy with some of the staff and some aren't. But again, this union is not for the cops. They're for themselves.
Problem is the cops are part of the low information, and that's why, people always go nuts at me when I'm like, well, you should have to live in the city. And I'm like, well, you don't have the right to vote. I consistently heard throughout my career, I don't care because I don't live here. And that's the big problem. And then we talk about how do people get elected like this? Let's think. We have a 50,000 person department and no one lives in the city. There's about 3,000 of us that live in the city. Oh, we can't afford to. I came from nothing, so I afforded to. If I could do it, you could do it. We don't vote. We don't pay attention to politics. We don't know who our unions endorsed, right? They don't have any statements out of who they endorsed. They blame everything on the board. Oh, the board made the decision. So the board made the decision to give our money and endorse someone that works directly against us. That's the decision, the board. But there's no question. There's no pushback, right? There's only a few guys out there. Shout out to Franklin Valdez. There's only a few guys out there calling out the nonsense about the unions. There's nobody in the sergeant ranks. There's nobody in the lieutenant ranks. There's nobody in the captain or above ranks. No one's saying anything about them going hardcore. They're constantly just supporting people who work directly against the rank and file, the safety, the health and wellness, the benefits, the pay. And it's not even arguing. It's not even a question if that's what the case is. That's exactly what the case is. Where they're giving money and endorsing candidates that work directly against the rank and file of the NYPD. And that's why their endorsement no longer matters, right? The endorsement of the PBA is a joke. It's an absolute joke. Nobody cares who you're endorsing at this point. It's disgusting that your money's being utilized, but the cops are low information voters, or they're apathetic, no information, don't even bother to vote type of people, or they don't even live in the city and they don't care. But if you pay attention to what these unions do, pay attention to what they do. See who they endorse in New York City, but see who they align themselves with where they live in Long Island. or upstate. When they're in the city, they endorse Democrats. When they're upstate, they're in Long Island, they're cozying up with the Republicans. Benefits them where they live, right? But they don't care about the city. It's just another faction of it. So Relly Rel gets arrested, and they hold this conference. Retired lieutenant turned state assemblyman Mike Riley out of Staten Island also speaks at this event. Let's play the video, and then let's get your thoughts. Let's see the grandstanding.
Police officers are here in this courtroom, and we're going to pack that courtroom today to make sure that we get justice for our brother police officer and his family. They were targeted for a vicious, vile harassment, a criminal act, just because he was doing his job as a New York City police officer. And this group, they had a plan. They weren't there for a peaceful protest. They were there to cause chaos and disorder. And then they went to that home to terrorize a family and to threaten a police officer from stopping him from doing his job. It's bad enough for police officers to have to deal with violent agitators on a daily basis out on the streets of the city of New York. But it's not right. It's impossible while you're home to have groups threaten your family, to go after a police officer just because he was doing his job on the streets. This group had no right to go to New York City police officers' home and threaten and cause chaos outside of his house. This individual needs to be held accountable. No one else should have to suffer because this individual might be back out in the streets. We need to change what's going on. And this isn't just a sole incident. This is happening all the time. All police officers are being targeted out on the streets. Their information of where they live is being disseminated all over social media. So we need stricter laws. We need resources to help us to make sure that these individuals stay behind bars where they belong. So I'm proud to have beside me Assemblyman Mike Riley, who understands what it's like to be a New York City police officer and has legislation that will hold individuals accountable who stalk and harass New York City police officers. So now I'm going to turn it over to Assemblyman Mike Riley.
Thank you, Pat. First of all, thank you.
Before we go to Riley, what do you think about 3 strands of hair?
Word salad. I mean, we just wasted a couple of minutes of our lifetime. Listen to that, because he provided he provided absolutely nothing of value. That was just useless information. Anybody could say that. You know what? My son could say that. He doesn't know anything about police work. They never talk about why. They never talk about the root causes. All he talked about was, what he said at the end was, we need stricter laws to actually have these people arrested. And basically what he's talking about is actually have them convicted for it. But we need to talk about why they're actually doing it. Let's talk about the actual root causes. Let's talk about what the problem is. Let's fix the problem so that they don't show up to any cops' houses in the future and we don't even have to make arrests. People should fear the idea of going to a cop's house, because let's call it what it is. 3 hairs. It's terrorism. It is an act of terrorism when you respond to a police officer's house as a follow-up in regards to an arrest because you're creating chaos, because you want to shut down the police department. Let's talk about the 50A. The 50A that has been manufactured, has been created to deteriorate the lives of police officers, to tear down the law enforcement profession, to tear down a police officer, to make him unattractable or her unattractable while they're employed, to make them unattractable in life after retirement or after vesting in their life after the NYPD. The 58 is meant to destroy police officers, to destroy ultimately the entire profession. He doesn't talk about the root causes. He just wasted our time. We really need to listen to that. He's there because he's self-serving, because it's great to be in the PBA, because he could care less. We're not talking about actually what's going on. He's not calling out what's really the problem. The leadership of the NYPD should be supporting these police officers, saying this is an act of terrorism. And everyone that responded to this home will be arrested, will be prosecuted, and will be held accountable. And we will contact the feds and make sure that this is an act of terrorism. That's not what he's saying. He just wasted our time. That's what he did. Unbelievable, John. What are your thoughts on his statement? Do you think that it had any value to it?
No, I think you're 100% right. I think it was a word salad. He provided nothing. If you look at the last 10 of his little rants that he goes on in front of the cameras, all he says is, we're going to pack the courtroom for our brother officer or sister officer. We're going to pack the courtrooms. We're going to be here. Like, what? So, okay, you're going to be there. You weren't there for Juan Perez, but now you're going to be there for these people. Okay, I'm glad you're going to be there. But what else are you doing? So he should just say, we're going to pack the courtroom, and then we're going to fund all the people that are creating this environment where people feel free to come to your house and threaten you and your children. And then they won't receive any jail time, and they'll be released on bail, right? That's what he should say. We're going to make sure we continue to fund the candidates that are helping this whole thing. But we'll pack the courtrooms, though. So that's the biggest problem. They can't have real conversations because they're phony. So he has to go around. And so now Mike Riley is going to present a solution. I like Mike. He has presented a lot of good bills. Unfortunately, they don't go anywhere because in New York State, we're under one-party control. I'm not going to lie. There have been interactions with Mike because when you're calling things out, people get mad, right? So here we go. So let's see what Mike Riley's got to say now.
Thank you to the men and women who wear the uniform. As Pat alluded to, I wore that uniform. I know what it's like to be in this city, protecting it, protecting the residents. And sometimes you feel like you're alone. But I want them to know you're not alone. We have your back. Back in 2021, when they repealed 50A, I warned my colleagues in the state legislature on the floor of the assembly that you are opening up Pandora's box. You are setting up our police officers, our peace officers, our correction officers, and our firefighters with a deadly chance of getting attacked at their residence and their homes and their families. So the legislation I introduced in 2021 was to ensure that we hold those accountable who get that information and use it to cause harm, to put fear in the lives of those who protect our city and their families. This is a prime example of what we're here for today, that this legislation should have been passed. It sat in the Codes Committee. They would not bring it up for a vote. 2023, I reintroduced it. So we're here today, standing shoulder to shoulder, telling my colleagues in the state Senate and the state Assembly to take action. If this was in place, maybe we could have prevented it from escalating. But until that happens, every one of our police officers are in danger. Why? Because we allowed them to get that information. We allowed them to open up that personal data. And we all know how quickly that flies around with social media and all other technology. So once again, I call on my colleagues in the state legislature, Governor Hochul, please, let's move this legislation forward. Not too long ago, we did the same thing for judges. We made sure that we put into law protections for them. Our police officers need the same. Thank you.
Police officers.
So what do you think? What do you think about Mike Riley?
Well, listen, I'll give him credit. At least he said why. But we know the answer why is because the men behind you are funding these defund the police politicians. This is just insane where the union dues go. I mean, again, the police officers unknowingly, because they're not paying attention to it, because they believe in their unions, they're too busy working, they're not getting to the politics of it. For most of them, they believe that their union is going to take their money and put it in the right direction. And they're taking their money and they're actually funding the enemy. You're funding your opposition, people that are polarizing to the police department. They want to tear down law and order. Why? This is manufactured. This is completely created. This could by people that have a complete disdain by police. And the people stand behind you that tell you, oh, let's pack the courtroom. We care about you. Are the same people that are funding the people that are in opposition. They create this environment, create chaos for the police officer. At no time should we talk about, and then when he said that was the only thing I caught on. Like, I don't know if I even like that statement where he said, well, this from further escalate. This shouldn't happen, period. People should have fear. Yes, there is fear equates to also discipline. There has to be a level of fear when it comes to the police department. There shouldn't be fear mongering, but there has to be a level of fear that if you respond to a police officer, the arm of the law is going to be held against you, and you're going to be hit with the federal government, and you're going to be charged with terrorism, and you're going to be on some terrorism watch list. But that's not what's happening here. Again, they're manufacturing this. They're funding the same politicians that hate the police, the same ones that are out there holding signs, defund the police. They want to tear down this entire profession, and you're giving your money to it. Why are we still paying union dues? Why, at this point in 2024, do we really need a union? What does the union offer? I heard, well, you need representation. Well, I tell you right now, anytime you go to a GO15, which is, for our active retired police officers, you know what that is. Anyone who's out of state, that's where you sit down for an interrogation, and it's recorded. It's called General Order 15, just an old NYPD number to indicate. When you testify there, the attorney that you meet with for about 60 seconds before you actually testify. And for the most part, they're just there to protect you when it comes to waiving your rights, and that your rights, that if you intentionally lie, you're going to be terminated. I can tell you right now, you can represent yourself. You don't need your representation for that. It's absolutely ridiculous. And if you're actually in a pickle or jam, in most cases, you're going to get your own representation. So instead of giving $51.84 biweekly, do the math at the end of the year. If you eventually are in a pickle, you could probably have that somewhere in Bitcoin making you money, and then you could utilize it. But again, completely useless. I think it's a waste of time. Self-serving. Put some uniforms on these guys. Make them go out and wear a body camera. Make them do what you have to do and fend out this war on cops right now. Yet they're sitting there eating like fat rats. I'm disgusted with these unions, honestly.
Yeah, I just don't. Again, I don't. I appreciate Mike, and I think he's right. I don't think his legislation's off, and he 100% did try to combat the 50A. He doesn't have a big enough voice or a loud enough voice, in my opinion. It's not his fault. It's the fault of the voters. It's the fault of the unions who are working directly against him. It's a lot. There's a lot of problems in New York. There's a lot of problems in New York City and New York State. So Mike has introduced some good legislation. He has fought the good fight. It's not as loud as I expect our elected officials to be, but he says the right things. He does the right things. He is a stand-up representative for New York State. He's one of the few. So the legislation is great. But again, it's going to miss the mark. It's not really going to touch the base. I don't think you're going to get the votes to vote on it. Ron Layson puts out all cops should have confidential registrations. I think that's 100% should have already happened. You might need to know my name and my shield. You might need to know who I am, but you don't need to know where I live. You don't need to know where I live. Like, that's ridiculous. You know where I work. You know where the job knows where I live. If they need to come get me, they're going to get me. The authorities need to know the public doesn't need to know where I live. You're just endangering my family more than myself. So 100%, I think so. But really, more importantly than even that, because everyone knew where I lived. Everybody knew where I lived. Like, I locked up some dudes, went to federal court, 5 years, 7 years, testified in federal court against them. They had kids in the neighborhood that I lived in that worked for them, and guys, and everybody knew where I lived, but they didn't do anything. And it wasn't because they were scared of me, right? They were scared of what would have happened if they would show up at a cop's house, if they would attack a cop. You know, and I walked around my neighborhood with my head high, and there was a lot of people that did not like me, and probably wanted to see bad things towards me and my family, but they didn't dare do it. And why didn't they dare do it? Because they knew the system in place would put them in prison for a very long time. And that's the reasoning. And we've lost that. We've lost our standing in New York City. We've lost our standing in the world. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing people now have no fear of the police. They're showing up at cops' homes. So we didn't have those laws prior, right? I didn't have those laws to protect me when I was out there running around, locking people up, testifying in court against people. I didn't have those. I didn't have the laws that Mike Riley's trying to introduce. I didn't have the protected registration, but I had the backing of the city of New York. I had the backing of common sense politicians. I had the backing of my elected officials. I had the backing of the public. I had the backing of the people who I worked with. And we don't have any of that today.
Yeah, I agree also. And, you know, I used to argue that, you know, I was at the Civilian Complaint Review Board constantly, right? Being the most complaint cop towards the end of my career. And some of the paperwork that you would have to fill out, John, I know, I think you had one or two in your career. I know you've been there. So sometimes I remember there was paperwork with the Civilian Complaint Review Board where they wanted you to fill out your name and address and information. And I refused to put the address information there. I said, why do I have to give that? I don't trust the civilians at the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Absolutely not. And I would always refuse to put any of that type of information. I would put my address as One Police Plaza, or I would put 737 Melrose or PSA 7. Why should I have to provide that information? Absolutely not. You shouldn't give your home address on any documentation when it comes to the police department. Your home address should be the precinct you work in or One Police Plaza. That's what should be the de facto response. So my advice to any cops out there right now, you shouldn't put your home address on any documentation unless it's your 10 card, which we all know is the you know, your actually your I guess you could say your jacket that's in the precinct that has all your information. That's different. You know, that's for police resources. And God forbid they have to respond to your home. But on any civilian paperwork, at the DA's office, at the CCRB, anything that you do with this job, do not write down your home address. If you have to fill out a police acts report, you know you don't have to, but you just put down your driver's license information. System Unfiltered, got to laugh. Put Eric is CCRB's worst enemy. Absolutely, brother. Absolutely, because they have a complete bias and disdain for police work. I just want to address, someone asked here, I think it was Patrick Donahue, I'm not sure, when Mike Riley had spoke, the question was, he talked about peace officers, and someone asked, what's the difference between a peace officer and a special officer? So to my knowledge, a peace officer is someone that works to maintain law and order just as a police officer, and they have in most cases, arrest powers, and special patrolmen usually work in a private sector as security and working for a business or a company. To my knowledge, if someone has something different, I appreciate it. But let's just ask ourselves again, why do we continue to be in the union? Why are we paying these union dues? What, if you actually had to write down, what do you get from these unions that you wouldn't get if you were not a union member? You're still entitled to your medical and dental by the city. Someone here said that you're still entitled to dental and prescription. I'm not sure. I might push back on that a little bit. I'm going to do some research, but I'm pretty confident that your dental and prescription is from the union. And as far as representation for your GO15s and such, other than that, I don't see what the union can do for you. Newsletters and stuff like that, who really cares? You need their newsletters, your 401k, your 457, your pension plan. That you can figure out on your own. You can get your own fiduciaries. Do you actually need those pension seminars? They're pretty much useless. Those are word salads. A lot of misinformation. I've been to these pension seminars. A lot of misinformation there also. So the dental prescription, I do believe you could get on your own. As far as representation, I don't think you need representation in a GO15 or a Civilian Complaint Review Board investigation interview. You do need it if you are charged with a crime or something of a serious nature and you're suspended. But then again, most cops get their own attorneys at that point. So if anybody disagrees, I'm curious what your thoughts are, but these are my thoughts. And look at the star of the show. Here he is, Relly Rel. Wish I could share a cell with him.
Before we get into Relly Rel, I just want to give a big shout out to Tom Sullivan. Like we said, the PBA failed to endorse him. It's an absolute disgrace. He is a guy that doesn't need to be doing anything in the state assembly. He's not doing it for money. He's not doing it for clout. He's doing it to try to save New York. He's doing it to support law enforcement officers. So that's why I say that the endorsement of the PBA no longer matters. The endorsement that counts, the voice of the rank and file going forward, is going to come from Defiant Unfiltered, no longer from the PBA, the SBA, the LBA, the CEA. They are part of the Democratic machine that's been exposed the last 4 years. And they continue to do it, even though the eye's watching them, everyone's seeing what they're doing. So let's just take a moment and just listen to our friend Tom Sullivan. And I just want you to listen to it and really go into why he was not endorsed. It's insanity, complete insanity. Tom Sullivan is the Republican, Conservative, and Common Sense Party candidate for New York State Assembly District 23. Tom is a financial professional who served simultaneously in the United States Army Reserve for 30 years and has now retired. His district covers Ozone Park, Lindenwold, Howard Beach, Broad Channel, and the Rockaway Peninsula.
Come November, I would empower our law enforcement agencies to go out there and do their job and not put them or their families or their pensions at risk for doing their jobs. We need drastic change in Albany so that we have a say in this matter, and they realize people of New York State will hold them accountable.
The Sullivan family has a legacy of service. Tom served for 30 years protecting and defending the rights of others. Come this November, he has earned your support. This advertisement's paid for by the Friends of Tom Sullivan. All right, we're back. So yeah, that's our friend Tom Sullivan, and that's who the PBA decided not to endorse. Instead, they endorsed the person who supported bail reform, who supported 50A, who supported all of the pro-criminal, anti-police legislation. Also should be noted, Marco Kepi on Staten Island. They also did not endorse. New York City PBA did not endorse. What's unique about Marco Kepi is not only did he serve this country as a United States Marine, but he also currently serves as a New York City police officer. And they instead decided to endorse a candidate who supports the defund the police movement. So now we're talking about this individual, Relly Rel, Terrell Harper. I like to call him the Deputy Commissioner of Anarchy for New York City. He had decided that he and his anarchist friends were going to show up to a police officer's residence and harass him and his family, threaten him. He kicked the police officer's front door, which is an attempted burglary. He lit an NYPD hat on fire and threw it at the officer's residence. He was subsequently arrested, and guess what's happening? He asked, this guy's a known agitator. He's been arrested over and over again for harassing the police. Relly tried to harass me at a Breonna Taylor protest one night. Didn't work out too well for him. But he's asking in the courtroom, he was asking that no press be allowed in the courtroom to take his picture, because if you let the press in, it could lead to him being harassed. If that's not laughable, what do you think about Relly Rel asking for mercy from the court so that he can't be harassed?
Well, it just shows he's the coward that we think he is. He's a complete coward. Listen, he only thrives when he's in a large group of chaos, and he has the ability to bully cops because their cops are on camera and they can't do anything. Again, I said he's a complete coward. I would love to share a cell with Relly Rel. I would actually enjoy it very much. So unfortunately, that opportunity will never come. But again, he's a complete coward. I've seen people like this in my lifetime. We've all seen people like this. You know, when he's by himself, he's a weak little boy. But he's a complete coward. And again, show any mercy on him? Absolutely not. Absolutely. But I love that picture, by the way. I love the picture of those cops walking him, because it just happened to be like a couple of masculine cops in good shape, and they're walking. And I was like, that was that's an iconic moment. Like, yes, that's they picked the right cops to that, by the way. I was like, that's the NYPD we knew, walking them out. That's what I want to see.
Here's Patrick Gordon. Here's the head of the NYPD Guardians Association, Lieutenant Patrick Gordon. He's on the steps of City Hall. He was advocating for the mayor, saying the mayor was fighting for us. So he says, "Good afternoon, everyone." He didn't actually say this. This is a meme, but he said, "Good afternoon, anyone. I'm here for the special promotion assignment." Oh, I mean for Eric Adams. Eric. So we had the large support of our. This is satire, people, so don't go nuts. That's not him, but he was there. He did say that Eric Adams has been fighting for New York City for 30 years, and he deserves his day in court. What do you think about a fraternal organization standing up and asking for and showing support and asking for people to await the mayor's day in court, actually taking a political stance? Like, what are your thoughts around the fraternal organization? Should they be able to do that?
There's numerous problems with this on different fronts, different facets. First of all, criminal association is the first hypocrisy. What do we know about the NYPD? Sal Greco was wrongfully terminated for his relationship with Roger Stone, his friendship. Meanwhile, Roger Stone received a complete pardon. But we have to have comparisons, we have to have a standard. That's the standard according to the NYPD, is you cannot engage in or associate with someone who has committed crime or someone who is likely believed to have committed crime. Eric Adams would fit into that category. Eric Adams is likely to have committed a crime. He's under indictment. And this is not work-related. This is, in their own time, supporting Eric Adams. So again, on the first front, this is exposing hypocrisy of criminal association. So I say at this point, internal affairs, which they're pretty much useless, they should open up their investigation right now on Patrick Gordon. So I'm saying right now, I'd like to report Patrick Gordon to the internal affairs. So I know you listen to this, Juju. I would like to make an allegation against Patrick Gordon for criminal association, just as Sal Greco was wrongfully terminated. I'd also like to say that the police department is supposed to be apolitical. You are not supposed to politicize at any point. So I like to say also that Patrick Gordon violated, along with the rest of the guardians in there, violated the NYPD's stance to not be political. But again, this is what we see with the police department right now. And that's why I've been making the joke about it for weeks, saying, hey, listen, what is the opportunity here? The opportunity is to get special assignment promotion. That's what it's for. Because I didn't see Patrick Gordon out there praying for Juan Perez. I didn't see them out there praying for Kenny Vittoria, but they pray for Eric Adams. I'm very disappointed in the fraternal organizations. I honestly, anybody, if you're in a fraternal organization right now that's supporting Eric Adams as man of the year, supporting Ed Caban, going out there praying, shame on you. You should remove yourself from that organization right now, because it's an embarrassing. You embarrass yourself. I mean, they've been shrouded by complete scoundrel and scandal. They're praying for Eric Adams. They're giving people man of the year that are getting their phones taken by the FBI. This is what's going on for the fraternal organizations. And the promotions that come out that correspond and relate to these fraternal organizations are very sketchy also. Just completely shrouded by scandal, shrouded by clouds of suspicion. I'm very disappointed what's going on with them. It's embarrassing. Patrick Gordon, again, I'm calling for internal affairs and for DOI to investigate your relationship with Eric Adams, and what business do you have there supporting a political pundit at this point? Shameful.
The thing that really bothers me about this is that where are the fraternals when there's a cop in trouble? Where are the fraternals? Where were they during the mandates? Where were they during any of the anti-police stuff? We go to bat for a mayor, but we don't go to a bat for our own. So yeah, there's the criminal association aspect there. You're 100%. But there's also taking a political stance, which has happened. And let's not forget that organization directly smeared this. They didn't call us by name and they didn't call the podcast, but they came on a meme, denounced it, called it racist, denied the fact that the meme was directly making fun of a statement that was made by Eric Adams. So the Guardians Association didn't think Eric Adams' statement was racist. They only thought the meme was racist. So they had no problem with Eric Adams' statement. They just had a problem with us making fun of Eric Adams' statement. And then that lie continues. You have weak men, cowardly men like John Shell who continue to further that, who continue to attempt to smear my name by calling myself a racist, by calling Eric a racist, off of complete, absolute lies like that. So I have a lot of issues with it. Again, all of the people who are standing behind Eric Adams at this point, even if you're like, oh, he's just the best option because I don't want Jumaane, all of the people, like I said, you will at some point regret that. When all is revealed, this pitch is going to be worth $1 million. And everybody that was behind this guy is going to be pulling their support from him. Everybody. This is going to be worse than giving Diddy the key to the city. It's going to be worse than that. There are numerous corruption investigations still to go. Never mind the fact that the bribery charges, everyone's just glossing over, and his defense is, they're just it was just courtesies, it was just perks for doing the job. Everybody takes bribes. What are you coming after me for? So that's his defense in the whole thing. So they're not denying it. I mean, Ingrid Lewis Martin went on the radio and admitted guilt. And I couldn't believe what I was listening to. She went on, she got her phones taken immediately when she gets off the plane from Japan. She goes on the Arthur Idal hour about whatever, a few hours later. And she basically says that, like, we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't do anything worthy of the feds or the district attorneys coming after us, but basically says, yeah, we committed crimes. And that's basically Eric Adams' defense, is that they're just gratuities. Everybody gets perks. They fill the iced tea up twice, get a free cup of coffee. What's the big deal? What's the big deal, Pat Gordon, is that if one of your members took a free cup of coffee, they would be arrested and fired.
This is shameful, because if Eric Adams actually goes to a trial and gets convicted, Patrick Gordon and the rest of the Guardians are going to forget about him and step all over him the following day, because Mayor Eric Adams won't be any use to him at this point. Because I never heard Patrick Gordon supporting Eric Adams before he became mayor. I never heard of anything. I know he took pictures with him. He knows him. But I didn't hear him talking about Eric Adams. But now, of course, the opportunity is there. Again, it's shameful. It's disgusting. Shame on them. Patrick Gordon, you shouldn't be promoted to special assignment. You should be demoted. Sal Greco was wrongfully terminated. You got the galls to bring out your entire association to pray for Eric Adams. Again, he didn't pray for any police officers. You didn't pray for Juan Perez. What? Because Juan Perez is Hispanic. He's not in the Guardians. You didn't pray for Kenny Victoria. You didn't pray for any other police officer. You're praying for Mayor Eric Adams. What? Because he has the opportunity. You could seize the opportunity to have yourself promoted, to become in the spotlight. What you're saying is that you're a man of low integrity. That's what you're saying, Patrick Gordon. You're saying you're a man of low integrity, because the indictment, yes, there are allegations, but they're pretty damning. If you read that indictment, they're pretty damning. And last I read, there's probable cause for that indictment. And probable cause means there's reason to believe you committed that crime. Yes, you're innocent until proven guilty, but Eric Adams and his staff has pretty much admitted to it. His attorney has said they're just gratuities, right? He's saying there's no bribery because there's no benefit, but there's some gratuities. And we also heard that there should be no probe to this magnitude. Shame on you, Patrick Gordon. You know what? You should be removed also. I'm calling for you to be investigated by Internal Affairs, DOI, and I'm calling for your demotion. You should be demoted. You're an absolute loser.
A good friend, Michael Freed, brings up a great point. Mike says this. He says, if they were to stand up for Trump, they would all get in trouble. Yet they are not for Trump, but willing to now stand for Trump because Adams is being treated the same way Trump did. A lot of things about what you're saying, but I'm going to bring up one point that your statement brings to my mind, is that if there were any organizations that stood up for Trump during his criminal trial, they would be held to pay. If there was an individual off-duty officer who stood up for Trump, there would be held to pay. Hell, you're getting investigating, you're getting the criminal association charge, you're going to get charged with, being political, all these things, using your office for political purposes, all different things if you were to stand up for Trump. But because it's a leftist spin and you're going to support Eric Adams, it's perfectly fine and no one will say a word about it, right? Because there's a double standard. There's not one justice. There's not one standard of justice for all in New York City or in the New York City Police Department. There's no standard of justice for most people, but for cops and Trump supporters, there's a tyrannical standard of justice that applies to you. We will investigate you until we find the crime, whether it's from 1808 or whether we have to make up the law to come after you. We will do just that to do that. So that's the standard in New York City. The other thing I just want to highlight is because we keep hearing the same narrative over and over again. And at first I was pushing back on it. Everybody was saying, oh, he's being targeted. It's a political indictment. I still hear it. I've been hearing it the whole time I'm here in the city. Everyone I speak to is saying it. And I respect everybody's opinion and that's fine. But to me, I'm just having a hard time believing that 30 something days prior to a presidential election, the Democrats are going to target New York City mayor, Democratic mayor, the self-proclaimed Biden of Brooklyn, the self-proclaimed Joe's favorite mayor, the migrant king, the migrant czar, that the Democrats are going to go after him and his entire administration because one time he asked for money and said something about Governor Abbott. I'm having a hard time believing that. And the fact that he's running around with this whole charade, it's absolutely hysterical. I mean, it's pure comedy. It's going to make for great scenes in the movie. It's going to be great scenes in the Crumbs movie. But the fact that they're allowing this to go on during this presidential election season, he's hurting the Democrats. And not only is he hurting the Democrats, he's aligning himself with Trump now. And what's that doing? It's pulling votes away from the Democratic Party. So, I mean, based on the evidence that I see, there's absolutely no way this is political. Based upon that evidence, why wouldn't they just wait till after the election? Why are you going to risk? Why are you going to risk national public attention of a Democratic mayor saying he's being targeted by the Democratic Party, by the Kamala and Biden administration? Why would you risk that 30-something days before the election? Why wouldn't you wait until after the election? And it's because of that reason and that reason only that I'm saying, well, not only that reason only, but it's because of that I'm saying there's absolutely no way that this is political, because this is a political nightmare right before a presidential election for the Democratic Party. He's hurting the Democratic Party while he's doing this.
You're absolutely right. But this prayer right here is nothing but political. Patrick Gordon, if you're not sure, this is a political stance. And I think that comment nailed it. Who was that? Patrick Donahue who said that? That absolutely right. Because when Trump was under indictment and Trump was at his trial under DA Alvin Bragg, could you imagine that the Columbia Association, John, right? Columbia Association is Italian, right? Could you imagine the Columbia Association put out flyers and advertise on social media that there's going to be a prayer for Trump while he's having his trial under DA Alvin Bragg? Could we just imagine the Columbia Association came out with the Emerald Society? And you know what? How about the Hispanic Society, right? We did have a rally by Sammy Ravello where it was Dominicans for Trump. Let's say we did have Dominicans out there. We had the Dominican Society. They're all out there for Trump. What would happen? There would be a completely different spin, and we would hear rhetoric from Adams, how this is just complete opposition to the NYPD. We would hear from the NYPD upper echelon that these cops will be held accountable and there would be discipline to face, but not when it comes to this. And again, it goes back to everything that we say. What is the standard? We see a complete different standard. We can make the comparisons. We see the way the police respond when they respond to riots in Union Square. We see how they respond in Staten Island. And clearly it comes down to identity. If you support Donald Trump, you'll face termination just as Sal Greco did. But if you support Mayor Eric Adams, who's currently under indictment, then there's nothing but applause. This is absolutely disgusting. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about Nepotism. We had done an episode about nepotism about a year ago now, because the nepotism in the police department had gotten so egregious. Even prior to that, we spoke about Dermot Shea, how Dermot Shea, former police commissioner to the NYPD, his son was put into a detective squad with less than 2 years on the job, about 18 months, which includes 6 months in the academy. And we talked about how egregious the nepotism is, and the nepotism equates to corruption when it comes to the police department. And again, we see it just get even worse, and they're doubling down. Here's a case right here. Nephew of senior mayoral advisor Tim Pearson fast-tracked to detective. His nephew is going to the Internal Affairs Bureau with 2 years on the job. But what's really striking about that, he does have an illustrious 2 arrests to his name. So 2 arrests in 2 years, 6 months in the police academy. So in 18 months, he garnered 2 arrests. And with those capabilities and those qualities, he's going to the Internal Affairs Bureau, and with 4 years on the job, promoted to detective. John, how egregious is the nepotism? Let's get into that.
I'm like, all right. So there's so much stuff here. So Errol Lewis says this has been going on for years, right? For 100 years. So nepotism always exists. It'll always exist. I don't think we've seen nepotism to this level ever, though. Ever. I don't believe there's another way to get promoted currently in the New York City Police Department, or to even get transferred. I think something we missed yesterday is that what was rumored is that promotions were being sold, but it was also rumored that transfers were being sold as well, too, by this administration. So you had to buy your transfer or your promotion. So we now have a cop with 2 arrests and 4 years on the job, and he's a detective. And now, obviously, he didn't go the traditional route of, being a cop, going to anti-crime, going to the squad, getting your shield, going to investigative unit. With 2 years on the job and a whopping 2 arrests, he gets sent to the Internal Affairs Bureau. And he gets his shield for answering phones after 18 months in the Internal Affairs Bureau. And I'm going to say right now, there is absolutely no way he should have ever went to the Internal Affairs Bureau, been allowed to be in the Internal Affairs Bureau, been allowed to be on track for his shield. In order to investigate cops, in order to even be able to assess what is an allegation against a cop, or assess what is corruption, what isn't corruption, what's a crime, to be able to properly interview someone, you need to actually have been a police officer first, right? Nobody should be in the Internal Affairs Bureau that doesn't understand how to be a cop. And clearly, with 2 arrests on the job and 2 years, and with 2 arrests in 2 years, you are not a cop. You're not a cop. You don't understand the job. You don't understand police work. You don't understand the patrol guide. You don't understand our rules, our procedures, our discipline. You do not understand any of this. Yet, when an allegation comes in, you're going to pick up the phone, and we're going to expect you to properly assess it, properly put the allegations that are being made, properly ask the right questions for that preliminary investigation that could have twofold effect. You not doing that could have an effect where you're not reporting corruption, or you're missing corruption, or it could have the effect that you're hurting good cops for absolutely no reason. So it all around not only affects the safety of the members of the New York City Police Department, but it overall affects public safety. It's an absolute disgrace. 2 collars, you belong nowhere other than on patrol.
I usually don't like to address the trolls at all, but I think in this case, I like to address this right here. So what Juju's saying right now is the Italians did it, the Irish did it. So what you're saying is that it's okay, right? Well, they did it, so if he does it, big deal. It's business as usual. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous. That is a ridiculous, ignorant statement. It's an arrogant statement. And the nepotism that we see now is so egregious. are there always going to be forms of nepotism in any organization, not just the police department, even the private sector? But it has to be. It has to be at least people. You at least have to pave their way. Maybe you put your nephew or son in the right direction, but at least they should have the skills to back it up, right? Because what about the family name, right? You're Timothy Pearson. Your nephew has to earn it and back his name and say, well, you know what? We put him in this position, right? Because he does have these skills. We fast tracked him, but not with 2 years on the job. And after another 2 years, you're a detective with 4 years on the job and you spent your entire time in internal affairs. I actually went on, John, you and I both went on Internal Affairs of Police podcast, which is by Marlon Marachi in Los Angeles. And I think you were asked the same question. And I remember Marlon had asked me a question and he said, what do you think is a requirement for someone if they're going to be in the Internal Affairs Bureau? And I said pretty much the same thing, that if you're going to be in the Internal Affairs Bureau, you should have had to have at least 3 years of street experience in a unit doing intrusive police work. So you understand what it is to do police work, but also self-initiated police work. So you understand, because you have to understand something when you actually investigate it. Because when you're doing an investigation, you have to understand and put yourself in the position, in the shoes of someone else, especially when you're investigating them. This is just so egregious. It's so blatant. It's absolutely ridiculous to say, well, the Italians did it and Irish did it. Oh, now the blacks do it. Again, I don't think this has anything to do with ethnicity. This has to do with Adams and his circle. It's all about nepotism, and it's all about tribalism. It's absolutely shameful. It's disgusting. It's so egregious. And what it also does, it hurts the police department because you have fantastic police officers. I have police officers out there right now that worked, that worked under myself when I was special operations lieutenant and crime sergeant. Awesome cops. I mean, fantastic. And they still can't get a shield. They can't get themselves to the detective squad with 10 to 15 years on the job. Fantastic cops. And this kid's getting a shield with 4 years on the job and didn't even make arrest. Shameful. Patrick Donahue, you actually made a funny comment. I agree. He said it must be quality over quantity. That's hilarious. 2 arrests. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, he belongs nowhere. He shouldn't be transferred to any unit at all. None. Not an investigative unit. And I'm not. By the way, I'm not crapping on guys that do patrol their entire career or patrol. I think patrol is the backbone of policing. You could get rid of every unit in the NYPD except for patrol. You are the people who answer the 911 calls. You're the people who are out on the street. Unfortunately, you guys really don't get to patrol because you're just going from radio run to radio run to radio run to radio run. So you don't actually get to learn the job enough, but you will learn the job by going to 911 call, 911 call, 911 call. And that's why I'm saying that's where he needs to be, because he needs to learn the job. He needs to understand the job. And now you have this kid. He has 2 arrests, so he doesn't understand the arrest process. He doesn't understand the draw-up process. He doesn't understand how to handle domestic disputes, how to handle anything. Now he's the rank of a detective, and I'm going to probably say he's probably terrible in internal affairs too. He's probably not good in internal affairs. If you weren't good on the street, we had Edwin Raymond on here a while back, and he's like, you're always harping on the amount of arrests people have. And I said, I was like, I'm not saying that arrests define you as a cop totally, but when you have none, it shows me your work ethic. When you have none to match up the years you did, it shows me your work ethic. But you have none of this experience. Now he's a detective. What's he going to do in internal affairs? He's going to study. He's going to become a sergeant. Now he's in charge of people. He's basically in charge of a neighborhood that day. He's ensuring public safety on the streets that day, and he doesn't even understand the job. It's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. Setting him up for failure, setting the police department up for failure. It's honestly terrible. I was in internal affairs for 2 years and 8 months. I got to say, I've seen a lot of guys come through internal affairs. I had one kid, Dominican kid. I think he had 700 arrests. 700 arrests. So I pulled him aside. I was like, what are you doing here? Like, what's your story, dude? And he's like, I couldn't get to the squad. The only thing I got offered was that I could go to narcotics. He's like, I'm tired. I don't want to prove myself that I can make it. He's like, I have a million complaints against me. I have a million lawsuits against me. I'm tired, man. I just want a shield. I didn't know any other way to get it. And I was like, I'm not knocking you. I'm like, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we have people that are here that were actually cops. You could properly invest. You know what's real and you know what's not. You know what's corruption and you know what's not. The problem when you have someone with 2 arrests being in internal affairs is you don't know what's real. You don't have a take. You can't walk in the police officer's shoes. You're only walking in the other person's shoes. So you can't have an impartial opinion. You don't know the other side of it. So it's really bad, dude. The nepotism is to a level we've never seen. And this is, people are going to say, oh, the story just beating up on this administration's always been there. I think this story is vital. And I think this story, it needs to be shown, because this is the problem. When you're getting young guys come on the job and they're telling you their bosses are idiots and they're smarter than their bosses and they know more than their bosses after 6 months, it's because they actually do.
You know what? Listen, I'll rhetorically say this. Let's say they're right. Let's say they're right. This is something that's always been the way. So does that mean because it's always been that way that we should just never put our finger on it and say, you know what, we have to put a stop to this? Does that mean, okay, you know what? It's always been that way, so we're just continuing this. So we're never going to make a change. Now that we have an opportunity to make it better, I mean, we talk about evolving. We have AI. We have technology. We're getting smarter. We're learning new things. We have the ability. So we're not going to make a change, even if that was the case. I say rhetorically speaking, because I do believe there's always been nepotism, but not to this egregious form where it actually equates to corruption, where it actually deteriorates the sanctity of the police department and actually could affect public safety, because we're putting a police officer in a position to investigate other police officers under internal affairs, where police officers may face discipline, and it's not even equates to someone that has the ability to impose discipline. I mean, honestly, just as you said, with 2 years on the job, you can't make an assessment. He's just like a CCRB investigator. They can't make an assessment either. They have no idea what's going on with police work. You might as well put him in the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Jay Ritchie, I want to say thank you so much. $19.99 to the podcast. I listen, thank you so much, everyone that put your hands in your pockets. We really appreciate it. Honestly, we really do. Good morning, fellas. Keep up the great work. Shout out to all my vets. Trump 2024. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for the veterans who serve this country and also who serve the cities and towns in this country. We appreciate your service. Again, the nepotism is so egregious. I've never seen anything like this. And John, you're right. I think you nailed it. Now he's going to have the time and the ability to study, and he could be a sergeant, and he could be in a leadership position, not knowing anything about police work. And I'm not saying you have to be the best police officer to be a good leader, right? You want to put people that are in around you that have the resources, but you don't even understand what resources you need or what would be valuable because you never did police work. So this is harmful and shameful. Again, this administration is riddled with nepotism, but I'm not surprised. I was contacted. I don't know if you heard about this. I don't want to go too much off the rails, but I'm just curious. If anybody could let me know, if you want to DM me, maybe you could help me out, give me more information on this. Same thing with John. So I had heard from a couple anonymous sources that even in the police department right now, which we know is pretty much a 2-tiered system, not general population, but those in tan pants I'm hearing are getting different type of GOs. These are like locked rooms, the kind of bullshit, BS GOs, and kind of things are being swept under the rug. So if anybody has any knowledge on that, please let me know. I'm hearing that they're getting, some quasi-type GO-15s. So, John, let's get into it.
Yeah. By the way, I've heard that a lot. I mean, I've heard that a lot of things are getting swept under the rug, not just easy GOs. You know what I mean? Things are getting swept under the rug. Complaints are getting pushed off to the side. They're going different routes than they normally go. Real problem. And that's when you have low integrity people like who Eric Adams appointed and who's running the New York City Police Department right now. That's the problem with low integrity is, again, there's not one standard of justice for the people of New York City. There's not one standard of justice for the members of the New York City Police Department. And it's multiple. This department's so fractured. It's wild. So yeah, I've heard that too. So that's definitely not new. I've heard that, but I've heard a lot worse, that their complaints when they come in are going into a different bin. they're going a completely different route. They're probably going the same investigator that has our case. Shout out to Sergeant Galvez. You know. So all right. So while Eric Adams is inside at his press conference all by himself, when 5 of his top senior mayoral advisors have resigned, I think we're going to see, everyone's saying Banks isn't going anywhere. I'm not buying it. I think we're going to see him step down. I said Banks. Eric said that he thinks it's going to be Ingrid.
I got Ingrid.
Through a different source, I heard Sheena Wright as the next to step down. So we'll see. Maybe me and Eric are going to be wrong again.
2 in a row.
2 in a row. We'll see. But I think you're going to see all of his senior advisors step down. I mean, it's a sinking ship. So he's inside. He's doing his off-topic Tuesday by himself. And outside is the Coney Island business owner who's alleging a shakedown by the Office of the Nightlife, along in conjunction with the former police commissioner Ed Caban's twin brother and the NYPD. So this is one part of the press conference. This comes in from New York City independent reporter Christopher Johnson. So let's take a listen to this.
You work hard for this stripping from you. So this lawsuit is seeking redress, monetary redress, injunction relief, and not just Mr. Keller, but anybody who decides to open up a business here in these boroughs, that they can be rest assured that they will not be harassed. And if they are harassed, they have some type of redress. Enough is enough. Right? You work hard for this stripping from you.
So they're here. They're just they're seeking redress. So now basically they're filing a lawsuit against the city for a racketeering extortion scheme.
You playing it?
I played it right.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, I know there was more. I'd seen. I think this lawyer is from Atlanta, but yeah, listen. I think clearly there's some teeth to this. Absolutely. What I'm curious about this is if the city is going to settle with him. I mean, if the city actually settles this case, there's your admission of guilt. So I'm sure. Again, we said it. I'm confident that there's going to be supplemental superseding indictments in the coming weeks. I'm pretty confident. I'll put my last dollar on it. I thought at some point there might be a large roundup, which would be a RICO case, but I think this is going to come in drips and drabs. I think we're going to see supplemental superseding indictments, and I do think that there's definitely some teeth to this case here and this racketeering.
Yeah, and unfortunately, who's going to pay for it? Again, the New York City taxpayers are going to be on the hook for. But really, that this entire administration should be facing RICO charges at this point. Absolute, it's just low integrity thing after low integrity, and there's no accountability at all for any of it. This girl Liv, I don't know her personally, but she had posted this yesterday, and she tagged me and you in it, and she said, "Never forget how Eric Adams paid $20 million to have Milton Glazer's iconic I Love New York logo redesigned for inclusion purposes. It took me less than 14 minutes to create his $20 million version, and I called this out back in March of 23. Someone needs to investigate this graphic designer who got the $20 million logo." So if you look at this picture, she has Eric Adams and Kathy Holschel's $20 million logo. We paid $20 million for it. We heart New York City instead of the I heart New York City, right? She says, this is not a $20 million worthy logo. My version of their logo took me less than 14 minutes to create. I honestly think her version is sharper and nicer. She said, not perfectly the same, but very close. It's close, but I actually think yours is sharper, I think, than theirs. So this is just another example of the numerous ways hundreds of millions of dollars are being funneled from New York City taxpayer funds. And I don't see anybody mad about it. I don't see anybody. I'm like, why am I the only, like, is it just us that we're angry about this? Like, I'm like, we were calling this out then, like, that this is crazy. But yeah, this is a great breakdown. Well, what do you think about this logo and spending $20 million on this?
Well, I remember you and I were talking about this, over a year ago, how stupid this is. They changed, I to we. And remember you and I both saying, why? Like, what's the reason behind it? I think this is a great assessment. I mean, $20 million logo. Who benefits? You change the word I to we. I mean, Adams loves to make these simple subliminal changes that effectively someone's benefiting. We've been saying it for the longest time. We've been saying it for 2 years. Every move that they make is a calculated response, and someone benefits financially in some type of private sector. And here we see it again. And I agree with you. I'm looking at it. I think that her heart is actually better than the heart in the first one. But again, $20 million. I mean, listen, I don't know how to make this stuff. I know people who know how to make this stuff. I'm sure Alamo Defender could probably whip this up in about 30 seconds. But, it's just another questionable, sketchy move by the Eric Adams administration. $20 million. And again, every time that we try to point these things out, what do we get in our faces? I'm sure I'll get this response today. What about the $850 million that's missing with former Mayor Bill de Blasio? Yes, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. But I think John laid it out extremely well yesterday when he said, well, then Eric Adams had the opportunity as the mayor, as first order of business, to say, hey, what happened to this $850 million? I want a full investigation to find out if there's corruption involved, or there's just complete malice, or is this just complete idiotic and a huge mistake. But let's figure out. Let's get to the bottom of this. But that's not what we heard. And who knows? I mean, the Eric Adams administration, I think, rivals the amount of money that was lost by former Bill de Blasio, probably even more when it comes to these the illegal alien military-age male migrant crisis. I would say far supersedes what's going on with former Mayor Bill de Blasio. This is Eric Adams 2.0. This city is far worse off than it was before. I'm not excusing $850 million loss. I'm not excusing former Mayor Bill de Blasio. I was not favorable of him at all. Absolutely not. But the city is far off worse than it is now. I didn't see cops getting promoted with 18 months on the job to detective under former Mayor Bill de Blasio. I'm sure there were, but not to this magnitude. We're seeing Dermot Shea. We see Timothy Pierce's nephew. It's just so blatant. It's ridiculous.
Eric Adams lover Juju says, John, if a plumber comes to your house and fixes the problem you've been attempting to fix for hours in mere minutes, should you pay them, them? I like the pronouns, them less. Absolutely not. They should get the money that they deserve for what they do. Unfortunately, creating a graphic that looks like it is free to make should be free. So if I call a plumber to my house to turn my water on by turning my faucet, I'm a moron, and I shouldn't pay them to come to my house. It's not a matter of should they make the money. It's a matter of why did I call them to turn the faucet on when I just have to do it. So it's, your analogy is like it's completely off the wall. And yeah, so for the people calling about the $850 million from Thrive New York and the de Blasio, oh, why aren't you guys mad about that? Oh, I was furious about that. I was actually furious when Eric Adams took office because he did nothing to address that. And I'm telling you right now, the 8 years of Bill de Blasio, the mismanagement, the appearance of corruption during the 8 years of Bill de Blasio is nothing. Nothing. The amount of money that's been spent is nothing compared to the 3 years of the Eric Adams administration. It's a drop in the bucket. But people are like, yeah, he only got bribed $10 million, bro. What's the big deal? It's like, what's the big deal, dude? He's taking bribes and he's telling you he's taking bribes and you're not concerned about it. You're not concerned about an elected official telling you they're taking bribes from a foreign country. That doesn't raise your eyebrows a little bit. You don't think that's a national security threat. You don't think that's a threat to you, your children, to everything else that's good and holy in this country, the sanctity of our nation. And what did Eric Adams do? You know, we broke down the blueprint when he first came out. He talked about Thrive New York. He said that, oh, there are problems in Thrive New York. Didn't label out what those problems were. So his solution to those problems were he changed the name of Thrive New York and he funded it more money. And he still continued the money still just continued to disappear. And nobody's asking a question. So if you're mad about the $850 million that Bill de Blasio stole, you should be really mad at Eric Adams because he said that he was going to restore New York City. He said he was going to bring crime down. He said that he was going to do all those things, yet Not only did he not look into where that money went, he doubled down on it and he kept the money flowing into those same places and giving it more money. He just changed the name and covered it up for him. So what role did Eric Adams play in that Thrive $850 million? A very, very big role.
I gotta laugh at Juju's comment. I think we're giving Juju way more airtime today, but I started laughing hysterical because I used to do a lot of industrial plumbing. Mostly industrial plumbing before I became a cop. But I also did some side jobs. I would do some small jobs in people's homes before I became a cop. I probably should have stayed with plumbing rather than become a cop. It would have made more money. But it was a calling to to either I wanted to stay in the military, but my father convinced me to go to the police department. But doing plumbing, I do small jobs, but mostly I would do clean outs, like roto type cleanings. And a lot of times just, people have kids and women, a lot of women, they just didn't know, their kids dropped a toy in the sink or they dropped like a toothbrush or something. And I would just go in and, open up the P-trap, let the water out, get out the obstruction. And it would take me like less than 5 minutes. And, and you charge $200. Like, it took you 2 minutes, but because, if you would have saw the toothbrush in there or something, something small, but yeah, or you just clean out a line. Sometimes you clean out a line with a camera and it can take you hours. And sometimes it can take you 2 minutes. But I think that's a totally different comparison. I just got to laugh at that, Juju. But I think this is a fantastic job. When this was put out, I saw that we were tagged in. I thought it was awesome because, again, this is very sketchy. I mean, $20 million for this. Who benefited? I'd like to see that also, John. I'd like to see who's on the receiving end of this $20 million or they, them that was on the receiving end.
He's a nut. He's crazy. Juju, thank you for spending all your time with us. Guys, we appreciate everybody. We got 855 people on here. We're getting close to 2 hours. Last thing I want to talk about, and I think it relates a lot. To what we're seeing in every industry. I mean, we talk about it in policing, obviously, because, the nature of the stuff we talk about is always based around politics and public safety. But, obviously everyone's talking about the shipping strike. And I think it was very curious what this union leader was saying. And he was honing in on the AI and things of that nature. And I think this is the first time we're really seeing a union leader speak out about jobs being shipped out and given to AI. If you look overseas now, these longshoreman jobs, they're basically a bunch of skinny kids sitting in front of computer screens with computer joysticks, right? So, and for one of those kids, they're probably eliminating 10, 15, maybe even 20 jobs. For one kid with a computer that doesn't really know anything. He's just operating these machineries. So let's just take a look at this. And then I think we'll go around and end it after that because we're going on 2 hours. So let's just listen to this and let's get your thoughts, Eric.
Over the weekend, the past
Secretary of Labor, Julie Sue, has been terrific. She's knocking down doors. She's trying to stop this. She's trying to get us to a media where we can have a fair negotiations. It's the companies that don't want to. They don't want to sit here and be fair. So that's why we're out here fighting for our livelihood.
What more from the automation do you want? What more protections could there be?
What more?
Yeah, they have language in there now.
Not strong enough, because what happens is they come in with new technology. We just caught them in Mobile, Alabama, called Autogate. And that means the trucks are coming in and they're already checked in somewhere else and not using the checkers in the ILA. Circumventing the contract. They don't care. They don't care. It's not fair. And if we don't put our foot down now, they would like to run over us, and we're not going to allow that.
You are going to grind the economy to a halt here on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast.
No, not us. They are. Don't spin it now because you're Fox News. They're going to drive it.
But are you worried? Are you worried that this strike?
They have the capital to settle this thing.
Are you worried that this strike is going to hurt the everyday American, the farmers that need to reach the export market? They're telling me that they're going to hurt.
Now you start to realize who the longshoremen are, right?
Nobody cares.
People never gave a about us until now. when they finally realize that the chain is being broke now. Cars won't come in. Food won't come in. Clothing won't come in. You know how many people depend on our jobs? Half the world. And it's time for them and time for Washington to put so much pressure on them to take care of us, because we took care of them and we're here 135 years and brought them where they are today, and they don't want to share.
Fox Business Lydia Hu joins us.
What do you think about what he's saying, Eric?
You know what, John? I saw this. You know what my first reaction was? I asked. I'm calling for him to become the PBA president. That's what I would like. I would like to see him be the PBA president. Pat Henry, take some notes. That's what you should be doing. Yes, you can't strike, but you could say in opposition. He's calling out the people. He's calling out the problems. He's calling out the actual issues. Yes, AI is replacing. It's all a part of globalization, as Marlon always says. I know Marlon's with us. How you doing, brother? Always talks about globalization. AI. Excuse me, that was a tongue twister. AI is replacing jobs throughout this entire country and in the entire world. But when it comes to law enforcement, that hurts people and it hurts public safety. We cannot have AI replace the human element in policing. It can be a supplemental, absolutely, a supplemental tool, a valuable resource, but absolutely not replace. We need a real leader when it comes to the PBA. And you know what's interesting about this is exactly what I was saying before. We talk about word salad. You don't have to be the most illustrious speaker. You don't have to have a silver tongue that Pat Lynch had, but you have to have compassion. Because he's not using fancy words, but you could tell that he's genuine and he has compassion and he's actually trying to lead his organization. And he said, you know, we needed you, but you need us. You need us. We've been doing this for 100 some odd years. Why is Pat Henry not saying that? You need us. You need our police officers to be strong. You have to support us so that our police officers aren't being attacked at home. Because if we're attacked at home, we have to protect our families. How can we protect you? That's what we need. I'm asking for him to be PBA president. Pat Henry, take some notes, brother.
Yeah, I mean, that's standing in power, right? This dude didn't go to any speaking classes. He didn't try to present well. He's not out there trying to hold on to the three strands of hair on his head. He's out there. He's speaking from the heart, and he cares, and you hear it. And that's something you don't hear from Pat Henry. It's something that Pat Lynch was great at projecting that he did, but he actually didn't, because there was no substance behind the things he was saying, and there was never any action to follow up what he talked about. This is not only a guy speaking from the heart and saying exactly how he feels and standing up, doing his job for his members. He's actually standing there in opposition of the entire world. He's saying, listen, I understand that this is going to hurt you, but you have to understand our plight. And unfortunately, if you're not going to understand our plight, then you're going to see exactly how valuable we are and why we need fair labor contracts and why we should have worker protections in place that we're not going to be replaced with AI. And like we talked about that. I don't know if you remember that. We talked about that about a year ago when they started introducing these robots, talking about this AI that was going to come and it was going to replace all of the human element in policing. And we said there needs to be worker protection. And right now, the PBA should be standing up and saying, hold up. For every robot the NYPD buys, we need X amount of cops hired. For every drone the NYPD purchases, we need X amount of cops hired. But they're not forward-thinking people. They're self-serving. They're not caring about the profession. It's not in their heart. And they're not willing to take a stand. So here's someone out here standing up against the world. I applaud this man. Yeah, you need somebody like that who's impassioned, who cares. You don't just need someone like that in the union. You need someone like that in politics. You need somebody in that who's running for office. You don't need a guy like Eric Adams talking about how God ordained them and all this other nonsense. You need a guy that actually cares about the people of the city of New York. You need a guy that's actually going to sit up and stand up against the federal government and say, we're not taking these people. And when you send them here, I'm shipping them back to whoever supported this. You know, and that's not what we had. We didn't have Eric Adams do that. We haven't had anybody do that. We don't really have strong people in government. We don't just need people like this in labor. We need people like this in government as well.
Absolutely. And his message is clear, and I agree with that, right? Listen, I get it. You know, he's almost saying, like, I'm sorry this is going to hurt you, but you need to feel this little sting so that you understand the position that we're in and you show us value. And it's the same thing. That's what Pat Hendry could say. Pat Hendry say, I understand the response times are completely delayed. And EMS and fire and FDNY is not getting the response that they need from the police department. But we have to be accurate in our responses. We cannot lie about our responses in order to seek change. In order for the leadership and the politicians to actually get more police officers out there, we have to be honest in our response times. We shouldn't be lying to try to hide the information to help out our commanders because it's self-service and they get promoted. We need the cops to have strength. We need real leadership. Again, just listen to his message here. He's not a polished man, but he's a man that cares. He's a man that's willing to say, yes, this is going to hurt, but you need us. You need to understand our value. And the only way that you're going to understand our value is if you feel a little bit of a sting. So I think the message is fantastic. PBA president, take notes.
Yeah, Joe Menendez doesn't like him. He says $900K a year, F that union, whatever. He's playing golf to stop Trump with this October surprise. I get it. Terrible timing. Like I always say, a lot of people get mad at me. A lot of people get mad at me for saying, when's the right time? There's never a right time to do the right thing. It's never going to be. So I don't know, man. I'm just saying, like, we're watching all of these AI things come in, and we really have to start paying attention to what's going on. We have to start paying attention to what's going on. It's not just happening in the police department. We've seen the other questionable contracts with the fire department where they were looking to eliminate jobs with an AI virtual fire security person that was traditionally manned by a human. There's a lot more jobs around the fire industry that they're trying to eliminate by using technology, which means less guys in the firehouse, less people on the rig. Same's going to be true for EMS crews. And then we've seen it on the buses, right? We have a bus driver, we have a maitre d'. They're looking to replace the maitre d' with cameras and AI technology. So we have to start as humans. This, I think, regardless how you feel about this dude or this situation, just look at the big picture of it. Like, we need to start having human worker protection. We're in the age now where we're going to start to see jobs eliminated. And what's that effect going to be on the economy? We don't know. And I think it's a scary time, but I think that if you're a labor leader, you supposedly care about the health and benefits and the welfare of your members. You should start to be calling for, hey, I get that whatever profession you're in, that we're going to need, we're going to need to utilize this technology, but that technology is supplemental. We're always going to need good people. And we're not helping to dehumanize our professions. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that the leaders of these organizations are taking a direct stand in dehumanizing their professions.
Yeah, I remember it was about a year ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, and I called you on the phone, like, John, look at this. Everything's being replaced with AI. And I remember Eric said, we don't have a problem with recruitment. It's okay, because people were leaving in droves with the police department. The retention rate was just terrible. And he wasn't worried about it. And I remember said, well, maybe it's part of this DI movement. As I started to watch things, I'm like, wow, AI is what's taken over. They're replacing police officers with AI. And we've seen it in every form. And it's not just the police department. You're absolutely right. It's complete globalization. We're seeing it throughout the entire world. And AI is replacing jobs. We're going to put people out homeless if we don't have work and protection. Again, there's no replacement for the human element. AI is a valuable tool and it's a valuable resource, but always supplemental to the human element. We need the human element. We need it also that we have dialogue to actually understand things. How can we actually move on and get better and analyze things if we don't actually have the human element? So again, I understand some people like this guy or not, and they like his message. And you know what? Maybe he is making $900,000 a year, but I can tell you what, his message is far better than Pat Hendry. And I agree with you. The timing is never right. It's almost like when people say, you know what, I would always have the guys working for me, and like, they newly get married. Congratulations, you're gonna have a kid. I don't know if it's right yet. I'm not a top pay yet, or I'm not making enough money. I need more overtime. And I would always say, when it comes to having kids, there's never a right time. Like, you're never gonna have enough money. You're never gonna have enough time. It's always difficult. Just, when you decide you want a kid, just have the kid and you'll figure it out. It's the same thing. It's you know what? Is the timing close to the election? Sure. But is there ever a right time for chaos? Absolutely not. And we just have to go through the motions and the bumps and bruises. I don't think this is a political ploy in this particular case. Could it be? But I don't see it. I've been watching this, but I don't see it as a political ploy.
All right, peoples. All right, we're going on 2 hours and 9 minutes. Eric, you got one more on you? One more topic?
Always one more, baby. Want to go another hour, another 2 hours? Nah.
No. Take it easy. Take it easy.
I got a point though.
All right. This one I just got. I don't know who sent this to me, but thank you, whoever sent it to me. Let me stop my screen. I'm going to pull this up to the screen. Just article just drops.
As long as Juju stays with us. Juju, are you still here?
Oh, Juju is it. That's one thing about Juju. He's a trooper, Juju. He's bright and early, and he stays. He's always here. Juju, you're going to get most consistent. That's the award you're going to get. We're going to give you a Commander's Day, Juju. Let's
do it. I want, I'm a little jealous. I have a plain office chair. Juju, do you have Captain America? What do you have? What's on your chair? I'm just curious.
So, all right, this article just comes out in the Gothamist, right? It says, titled Early Edition, Cops Fined for Prank Calling a Guy Who Complained About NYPD Cars on the Sidewalk. I don't know anything about this. Let's read it. So, good Wednesday morning in New York City, where Mayor Eric Adams is due back in court. What else is happening? After a Prospect Heights man repeatedly called 311 about cop cars parked on the sidewalk outside of a precinct, one NYPD officer got the guy's number and left him a series of pranked voicemails. Now that officer is being fined $500 and docked 60 days of leave. What do you think about that? That's all it is. That's just that little note. That's all it is.
That's all you got on it? I mean, it's kind of
funny.
No.
I got it. I got a different article. I got a subsequent article about it.
Let me hear.
But let's just talk about that right away. Like 60 days and being docked $500. What do you think about it?
First of all, I mean, it's kind of funny, right? He's pranking this guy. He's making these stupid 301 calls. But at the same time, it's pretty stupid, right? It's stupid. But I think the penalty has to fit the crime. 60 days, it's a little egregious. That's ridiculous. And a $500 fine, like double whammy. What do you think?
I don't know, man. I think he deserves it. You're a moron, dude. You're in New York City.
But 60 days?
60 days. I'm totally for it. I'll sign off on it. 100%.
What a dope.
You're a moron.
Is that real? Is that real?
Yeah. Hold on. I'm gonna bring up the.
I thought maybe you're joking here.
Hold on. I'm gonna bring up the subsequent article about it. Hold on. So, I'm all for it. I'm signing off on those charges. So everybody can say if you put me in.
How many prank phone calls you make?
If you prank call people that call 311, if you as much as I think they're annoying too, I'm giving you 60 days too. So here we go.
Reminds me of days I used to prank the desk all the time. I used to call the desk and be like, hey, do me a favor. I would say, it's Captain so-and-so from Maternal Affairs. Can you fax paperwork to this number? And I would have them fax to themselves.
That's different. We're allowed to prank each other. You won't get in trouble for that. That's different.
Yeah, I think it's dumb, but 60 days is a lot. Maybe 30.
I don't know. It's harassment, dude. It's a crime. It's aggravated harassment.
You're absolutely right. I know.
He's lucky he didn't get collared. It's different than calling the we used to call the telephone switchboard operator when they were rookie and be like, yeah, go up to the roof and bring your flashlight and help land the chopper on the heliport. And a lot of guys fell for that. They're like, Lou, how do I get to the heliport? Sarge, how do I get to the heliport? It's like
I used to tell the new guys, do me a favor, the sergeant, he wants you to go down to the basement. You got to go get a bucket of steam.
Yeah.
but my point is, you're right. It is a crime. Technically, it's a crime of aggravated harassment. But so is threatening our families. Sending pictures of zip ties and stuff. And that person didn't get arrested. So I'm just making a comparison.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that's because the upper echelon of the NYPD is corrupt and they're targeting us. But like, you know, the overall rank and file isn't, and they're held to a completely different standard. There's no standard for up top, but there should be a standard for police officers. So I'm just saying that. So let's get into the article a little bit. He called 311 on the police. They called back making dolphin sounds. Officer Brendan Sullivan was hit with a fine for harassing a Brooklyn resident who had complained about illegal parking scooters. Officer Brendan Sullivan first used the breathy voice of a seductive woman, and then he panted. Then came the animal noises. Paul Vogel, a 52-year-old Brooklyn man, was the recipient of the menagerie of voice messages. For years, he had been frustrated at police cruisers and fire department vehicles parked on the sidewalk in the crosswalks in his Prospect Park Heights neighborhood, which drove him to call City's 311 complaint line hundreds of times. Officer Sullivan retaliated, calling him and leaving voicemail messages for 10 months. On May 16, 2021, is that all cops are woke? No,
it sounds like it.
Yeah. Is that you? Brendan, when you're done, when you're invited on the podcast. On May 16th, we want to break down. We want to get into this, right? It's already over. It's a closed case. On May 16, 2021, the officer used his department-issued cell phone and left a voicemail. Brendan, you're not going to be a detective. I'm just letting you don't have the capability. I'm just going to let you know. You're not detective material, kid. It's okay. You could still be a sergeant. On May 16, 2021, the officer used the department-issued phone and left a voicemail of dolphin noises, according to reports. 9 days later, he escalated the harassment, adding seal barks and the bleatings of a sheep. The 6 messages that Officer Sullivan left between March 2nd, 2021 and January 24th, 2022 came to light after the city's Department of Investigation began looking into retaliation by the police against people who had complained about illegal parking. Street Blog Online, a news organization, had been publishing stories about the allegations, including one that quoted Mr. Vogel. I didn't see the story. I won't get into it, but last month, Officer Sullivan agreed to pay the price, a $500 fine to the city's Conflict of Interest Board, which concluded in a disposition that Officer Sullivan had sought to discourage a citizen from exercising his constitutional right about government action. He had also given up 60 days of leave, which is worth about $25,000 in pay. All right. So now that we know a little bit more, what are you thinking?
Well, so I'm going to change my first stance. And don't get me wrong, I think it's hilarious, but it's stupid. I figured maybe it was one time or 2 times, but for 10 months, that's insane. No, for 10 months, absolutely. I think 60 days is actually, honestly, even if he faced termination, I wouldn't be completely opposed. I think it's absolutely moronic and stupid. If it was, like I said, if it was 1 time or 2 times, it's stupid. But to continually harass this person on a 10-month basis is absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, absolutely. I have 60 days is actually pretty fair. I mean, he's lucky to get charged with a crime.
Oh, absolutely, dude. He's 100%. Yeah. I mean, he honestly, he's lucky to get charged with a crime and terminated. And is it stupid? Is it childish? Yeah, it is. But you got to think of it. You're a New York City police officer. Someone's calling to complain. Unfortunately, the case is that, like, a lot of times there are people who are recidivist 311 callers. Like I gave a story recently on a podcast where I said this woman moved next to a bar and she would complain that the vibration from the bar would shake her home. And I would go to her home with a sound meter and it wouldn't emit 1 decibel. You wouldn't hear anything from the bar, but she would call 311 every day. And we had to go there and appease her, and I get these people could be considered annoying to you as a public servant, but that's your job. That's what you signed up to do. So we can't go and harass them. I mean, it is a First Amendment violation and it is a crime, aggravated harassment. As dumb as it is, as funny as it is, it's a funny story. Maybe we could add this as like a little sidebar onto the Crumbs story. We could show all of the ways the police department has broken down. And maybe we could even do the attacks on this podcast as well, with the threatening of our children from active members of the NYPD as threats against ourselves from a police captain and his entire team of tight khaki pants wearing kids. So a little bit more. The officer who joined the force in 2007. So he's not a rookie. He's got a lot of time on the job now, and was posted to the 77th precinct, should be held to the high standard of compliance with the Conflicts of Interest Board, according to the disposition issued. He had to attest his misdeeds in a sheepish first person. I left a voicemail for him, which I pretended to be a former romantic partner, Officer Sullivan acknowledged. Mr. Vogel said Tuesday that the punishment felt pretty significant for what ultimately are some prank calls. On the other hand, the guy is a cop and harassed a civilian, he said. The idea that someone would do that in their official capacity, still has a badge and a gun, doesn't make me feel very great. This actually leads me to something that I think a crowdsourced truth, Jason Goodman, he had just called the detective squad. I'm going to bring that up too, but let's get through that article. And I think that to me was alarming as well.
I think you should bring that up. I think that's a great, by the way, John, it's a great correlation.
Could you do me a favor while I'm reading this? Could you try to find that and inbox that to me? And Jason, if you're on this, could you please inbox me that?
Absolutely. Let me see if I can find it. Great. By the way, John, I just want to ask you a question before you go into it. You had a sound meter? Because I never got my hands on a sound meter. First of all, I had a tip meter, but I could never find it. But you actually had a sound meter?
Yeah, but I think they got it from the borough. Like the lady was just, she was just consistent, dude. Hundreds.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was like,
I don't think we actually had it in the precinct. I think the SOL handed it to me and give this back to me. I had to go and then give it it was I had I had
good luck finding any equipment on this.
I had the holy grail. I was like, yeah, okay,
yeah. I was impressed when you said that. Like, wow, we actually had the sound meter. But yeah, dude, that's a great story. But absolutely, I just want to say, when you first told about it, I'm like, this is funny. I think maybe it's one time, 60 days. I mean, stupid, but to do this for 10 months, the more I think about this, I'm like, you know what? Termination is not so bad. This guy's a complete idiot. What a moron. Unprofessional.
Listen, I think the dude is, as much as he calls 311, I think he's pretty it's just some prank calls. You know what I mean? He's like, nah, but he's on the other hand, he's a cop. So I think the guy's pretty forgiving. It is a crime now, people. It is.
Yes.
I'm not skipping over that fact. I think it's funny.
It's funny. Come on.
I'm glad the guy's not losing his job over it, but he could have. He could have easily. And I think if this civilian pushed further, he might. I don't think, obviously he received his penalty, so it's over. So I think the officer, like I said, I think he's invited on this podcast. He's only a few years away from retirement, so we'd like to hear the story firsthand. Maybe we could have the civilian on too, and he could tell us his story. Maybe we'll do that. So he said, Officer Sullivan was placed on modified duty, which means he is not patrolling, the police said. He cannot be reached for comment, nor his lawyer respond to the messages. The department is dedicated to ensuring pedestrian safety for all New Yorkers, the police said in a statement. For years, residents throughout the city have complained about illegally parked cruisers and emergency vehicles, posting photos of offenders on social media and pointing out the problem to city council members at precinct meetings. The complaints became so frequent that this year, the Office of the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York sent a letter to the city threatening a lawsuit officials did not seek to stop the practice. The police said Tuesday that the department was working internally to review the address and concerns. There's just more, there's just more and more of it. But I think the more important thing that we show here and what we need to bring on here is they actually have the prank calls in this article. I have to save this article. So let's play the first one. Let's play the first one. This is the dolphins, seals, and sheep. Here we go. This is up on the screen, right, Eric?
It's up.
Okay.
I found dolphin noises on YouTube. I was
No, this is the actual, they have the actual prank calls in this article. Here we go. So that was the one of the seal and the sheep that and that this
But you know what? Listen, I ain't gonna lie. One time is funny, but this is why we have to have strong masculine men and women on this job, because there's no way that he was doing this by himself. Like, there had to be cops sitting there listening, laughing, and at some point, did anybody say, like, dude, all right, enough's enough, you got to stop? That's why we need strong men and women to police each other. I mean, at some point, you got to tell them to stop. Like, 10 months is crazy. If you did it one time, I listen, you stupid. Should there be some discipline? Yes. But 60 days, I would say, I thought maybe it was one time, 30 days. But when you do it for 10 months, I'm sure after 10 months, it's not funny anymore for this person. And they're pretty tolerable of it. Yeah, I think termination would not be a far stretch. I would say that, the crime has to fit the penalty. What's in the discipline matrix for dolphin noises? I don't think he's in the disciplinary matrix.
Man, dude, that's the thing is, it's a penal law crime. Like it's
right,
it's not
you're
in
right.
the disciplinary matrix. That's so like that's the weight of it. It's funny. We're laughing. We got 1,022 people on here. For those of you that just joined in, we're just talking about a cop who was prank calling a civilian who continuously called 311 over the cops parking on the sidewalk. We're going to play some of those clips. The case of Officer Sullivan revealed another strained dimension of the tension between the residents and city employees, often police officers who violate the parking rules that are supposed to apply to everyone. The 311 hotline is meant for the public, which can lodge complaints about anything from potholes to bad behavior by city employees. Reports can be anonymous, but callers are encouraged to leave their names, addresses, and phone numbers so the right agency can follow up. When Mr. Vogel called his complaints, his contact information was used for vengeance. All right, here's the next recording.
I don't know if I can finish. I can't stop laughing. I'm going to finish the show.
Here it comes. Here's the next one.
We put on mute.
Paul, pick up. Paul, pick up.
All right. Paul, pick up. That was what it was. Okay, so then Mr. Vogel began using 311 frequently during the pandemic, frustrated by the constant sight of emergency vehicles on the sidewalk, blocking crosswalks, and even in front of the hydrant outside his apartment building. It's not a minor thing, he said. It puts people in danger. Mr. Vogel, who does fundraising for a non-for-profit organization, said he knows he called incessantly. Some people play Candy Crush, he said. I was a habitual reporter of things.
No, we got to get this guy to the podcast. If anybody knows Mr. Vogel, if anybody can reach out, please, we got to get him on the podcast. This would be hilarious.
Oh my God. But that's, kind of like, dude, at some point though, it is harassment of the police department though, too. I mean, it's like, yeah, you guys park on the sidewalk. It's like, yeah, that's what we're told to park, dude. Like, what do you want us to do? I remember there was and I knew the guy too. That was the funny part. He used to call 311 all the time and complain. He was like the community board manager, but he was like my friend's brother-in-law. So I showed up one day and I'm like, dude, it's 3:00 in the morning and you're walking around here like you're the parking police. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, you don't think it's a big deal? I'm like, but I just don't understand why you think it's such a big deal. Like, I just don't understand why you're looking at inspection stickers in your community at 3:00 in the morning and you're not sleeping when you have work tomorrow. And like, I knew the guy, so I wasn't, I was a lot more candid with him than I would normally be with like a member of the public. But I'm like, dude, if you really should just take the test and become a parking agent. Like, you're out here at 3:00 in the morning. You obviously have passion for it. Like, what you found your calling. Like, what? And like, I didn't even ticket the dude whose inspection spy. I was like, I'm leaving. Like, this is ridiculous. Go to bed. But like, there's people like that. Like, what do you think about people that consistently call 311?
Well, I had that issue also, and I can understand when the commanders, for some reason, as a special operations lieutenant, I had to oversee the 301s. I had to audit them, so some of them were really nonsensical, and I think some people use it. They would call 301 constantly because there was someone was parked on a sidewalk and like the lip of the front of the car was in their driveway. It was just like really egregious. Like sometimes you have to be tolerable, and know which battles to pick and choose. And they would call 311 constantly, like, and say to them, listen, I understand your concerns, your complaints, but you made 10 complaints in an hour. We have to give our police officers an opportunity. Unfortunately, it's a big city. We have a priority level. And if it's that much egregious, call a tow truck. Call a tow truck, have them address it. But, the police department can't do everything. Some people have legitimate complaints. And it's funny how you always get people like, you get those people that have emergencies and they don't want to call 911 because they don't want to call the police. And then you have the complete opposite. I always notice that in my career. You have the people who don't want to call 911. Those people are going to have a knife halfway in their neck and they don't want to call the police and bother them. But then you got the people, they'll call 911 or 311 for every little thing. They want the police department to handle their lives completely. So, yeah, sometimes it's complete abuse. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is funny. But, hey, listen, Brendan Sullivan, if you're watching this, and we know you're still keeping your job because you're losing 60 days, it's hysterical. But if you can get us the phone number to Mr. Vogel, I would love to get him on a podcast.
Yeah, and even though I would sign off on the 60 days in a heartbeat and say, you're lucky, that's all you're getting. You're lucky you're not getting arrested and losing your job. I would still be laughing the entire time because this is pure comedy on every angle. This article is actually hysterical too. So he said he received calls from blocked numbers before they were often from the police. Usually the officers were not helpful, he said, with some falsely claiming that they were allowed to park on the sidewalk. He decided to ignore the calls, but when he heard Officer Sullivan's message, he said he was shocked that someone had been stupid enough to leave a recording. The first, on March 2nd, 2021, claimed to be from an ex who in a whispery voice told Mr. Vogel, "I hope you still dream about me. I just want to let you know I miss you," the voice said, calling him Paulie V. "I hope you pick up my call next time. You're still the best I ever had." All right, let's hear that one. All right, no laughing. Hold on, straight face.
Hi, Paul. Just call and see how you're doing. I thought I saw you on Vanderbilt, but I guess not. I tried to wave you down. Just want to let you know that I miss you. And I hope you pick up my call next time. You're still the best I ever had. I hope you still dream about me. Love you, baby boo. Bye, Paulie V.
I can't. How are we going to make it to the show? That's hilarious. Could you come on? I tell you right now, that must have been awesome, Gio. I would love to do that, Gio. Can you imagine, John? You're actually doing that, Gio. All right, we're gonna play Exhibit 1 with the dolphin noises. All right. You would have to play it all, man, Gio. That would be a star. Like, there's no way you're leaving anything out. If there's 100 phone calls, we'll listen to 100 phone calls.
Oh my God!
Honestly, listen. If this guy gets terminated, Brendan Sullivan, you got a career in comedy.
Paulie V.
He's like, "You're the best I ever had."
Oh my God! So the second voicemail featured heavy breathing. The messages did not stop at the animal sounds. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get it together here. Officer Sullivan called back 2 more times and said, "Paul, pick up. Paulie, answer my calls." The Brooklyn District Attorney's Office previously investigated the case and determined that there was no criminality. They were just probably laughing so hard that they were like, "We're not charging this dude. Like, this is crazy." It 100% is a crime, like without a doubt, and it's 100% criminal. But it's funny as hell, and I think Vogel was kind of cool about it too.
I think Vogel was entertained too. Come on, like
he definitely was.
He didn't say anything. It's hysterical,
dude. I some people play Candy Crush. I call 311 incessantly. Like, he's kind of like taking a little shot too, you know. He probably gets a kick out of calling 311. So It's not clear how the department investigation traced the voice messages to the officer. The city's CCRB, an independent oversight, found he had engaged in sexual misconduct by
What? There must be some other phone calls.
by sending harassing messages. He made prank phone calls. He caused alarm. He did all that stuff. 100%. He didn't engage in sexual misconduct. He had abused his authority. I'll agree with that, and was untruthful with investigators when he denied leaving the messages. That's a problem. That's a line in official GO. I don't know that that's true because obviously they're charging you ridiculous things.
You can lie on the job now, John. You didn't know that?
Well, yeah.
You can become deputy commissioner. We can make him deputy commissioner.
The board recommended the loss of 60 days of leave on September 11th. Edward Caban, the police commissioner, approved the discipline. I would have approved it too. I'm not, it's stupid. It's hysterical. This whole thing's funny. John Caney, who pushed for 311 system and is now the director of the watchdog group, Revenant Albany, said using information derived from a 311 call to harass a resident could have a chilling effect. Fortunately, I do agree. This is an abuse of power, he said, and it wrecks the efficacy of 311, which remains its most important accountability tool, short of voting that people have. In a statement, the city's Office of Technology and Innovation, who runs the system, said that protecting the public trust and the integrity of millions of New York City 311 calls received annually is a priority. Any conduct inconsistent with the city's 311 privacy policy is handled accordingly, the statement said. The 311 service only collects identifying information needed to work on your service request, which is supposed to be shared only with city agencies, city workers, and vendors. The system fully cooperates with law enforcement agencies in identifying those. Mr. Vogel said he will.
I agree with Sleepy Joe. Sleepy Joe says crime 301 calls are always EDPs. Spot on, brother. Always. The crime 301 calls, they're always EDPs. Honestly. They definitely are. So I agree. Listen, it's funny. Technically, it's a crime. But I think with this, Brendan Sullivan actually did some good in this, right? We always say when there's some bad, there's some good. We actually have to look into the 311 system and make sure it's not abused. Because it is abused, there's a lot of fake calls, and I think those people should also be held accountable. And I'm not trying to victimize the victim here, but because Brendan Sullivan is, it's hysterical. But, to carry this on for 10 months. But at the same token, we need to analyze that the 311 system has to be used properly. And I think for this to carry on for 10 months, I think Mr. Vogel knew himself that, he's on the other side of that spectrum of using the 301 system also. I'm curious how this came to light, how they actually found out it was Brendan Sullivan. Yeah, that I'm curious about, but it doesn't even matter at this point.
I think that he alleged it originally. I think he knew.
Probably.
He was calling, and it was that. I think he was making the allegation, like the cops are prank calling me, and I think that's how they looked into it, and that's and then they look, all right, who's on the TS, who's handling the 311 calls? Let's look at the department phone, and the dude used his department phone. I mean, so
that's pretty funny, yeah.
Yeah,
but the argument I have to say though, that the only argument out of this that really is I can understand, like where the criminal nature comes into is. You are accessing someone's personal information, and it could be used to harm someone. It is aggravated harassment, absolutely. Ron Lacy says they changed charging aggravated harassment and won't charge unless there are threats of harm. We used to call this felonious mulberry. You're right, but this is harmful, right? This could be harmful, right? The annoyance, alarm, someone has your information, they're constantly calling you. I don't know what hours he was calling him, so I guess it could be harming. I think that's kind of subjective in what you feel.
Yeah, I'm just gonna play this one more time, this clip, while I'm looking for that other prank that just happened. If not, we'll just wrap it up if I can't find it before this ends.
You're looking for Jason's clip? Yeah.
Just call and see how you're doing. I thought I saw you on Vanderbilt, but I guess not. I tried to wave you down. Just want to let you know that I miss you, and I hope you pick up my call next time. You're still the best I ever had. I hope you still dream about me. Love you, baby boo. Bye, Paulie V.
Is that the sexual allegation right there? The best I ever had?
By Paul EV.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. You know what? I'm gonna be laughing all day right now. When I think of these videos, I'm just gonna be laughing all day. So I want to thank Brendan Sullivan. You know what? You lost 60 days, but you put us in a hell of a good mood.
Oh yeah, that was a very funny segment. So all right, listen, I can't find the prank. He's got a lot of stuff here. I can't find what it was. We'll bring it to you next time. But yeah, any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I think this was a great segment. Again, I just want to, I want to advise the cops. You do what you want, but at least if you choose to continue to stay in the union for whatever reason that is, but actually be analytical and actually analyze what are you paying for, what are you getting out of it, get your bylaws, actually start to look into it. Who do they endorse? And find out the people they endorse. Actually look them up and see what they stand for, and find out how it's in opposition, and really start questioning where your money goes, because it is your money. It's almost $52 a paycheck. That's a lot of money right now. Everything is so expensive. I mean, geez, it probably costs a family of four probably $800 to $1,000 a week with food and go to the supermarket. It's so expensive right now. So, listen, thank you, friends. Listen to the podcast. We appreciate it. I'm glad we had a good laugh together. Sometimes we need that. It's funny. Listen, that's the one thing I miss about police work. I'm so happy to be retired, but I do miss the fun that we used to have. There were times, active guys are retired. There was a lot of fun things about the job also, and that's why we want it to become better. So with that, thank you everybody for listening. I appreciate it. John, you close it out, brother.
Just got one question for you before you go. Patrick Gordon, president of the Guardians Association for the NYPD, good guy or bum?
Get that bum out. He's a bum. You heard it, Patrick Gordon? You're a bum. You heard it from me.
Bum. I agree. People, we thank everybody. 1,028 of you. Appreciate all you. Appreciate the love and support. Appreciate the haters. Everybody will be back 8:05 live tomorrow. Yes, we will be back 8:05 live tomorrow. I'm losing my days here. We'll see what's coming. I think there's going to be some fireworks at the end of the week. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning. We'll get back out there. Thank you for joining us. New York's finest retired and unfiltered podcast. We'll be back at you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community, but who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901 Blue. That's 888-901 Blue.